I am getting used to that gavel. I don't know if I'll ever get used to that gavel, but welcome. We're glad you're here for our school board meeting tonight. I guess that's our call to order, and then I have been asked to give our reference tonight. So if you'll join me, please. Our dear kind Father in heaven, we are very grateful for this opportunity to gather together as school board members, as district leadership, and as community members at this school board meeting. Father, we pray that thy Spirit may attend this meeting, that our thoughts will be clear, and that the things that we have to say will also be clear and straightforward, that we can remember to be kind and respectful and open to others' points of view. We pray ultimately, Father, that our goal of serving the students of our district will be at the top of our minds and top of our priorities as we look to what is best and make decisions that will in the best way affect our students, our children, and our teachers as well. We are grateful for the many blessings we enjoy of freedom and the wonderful things of this great land. We pray for these things, Father, and ask for these blessings in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, our flag salute will be given by Steve Carlson, our superintendent.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to turn the time over to Stephanie for our recognitions portion.
Okay. So this is my first time doing this, and I'm already embarrassed because I forgot a paper. It's fine. Okay, so first we're going to recognize Austin Story, who's here. He's a principal over at Lakeview, and this is his first year as a principal, and he's doing so much good. It says, we want to recognize you and thank you for your tireless efforts as principal of Lakeview Elementary. There was a heartfelt letter that was sent to us, and I'll just read a little bit of it. I'll read the last paragraph because it's really good. It says, Austin is supportive to his staff, and I feel very comfortable talking to him if I have a concern, and I know that he will sincerely listen and try to come up with a solution. He shows everyone kindness and respect. He always has a smile on his face, and we are so lucky to have him at Lakeview, and I'd like to echo that we're just lucky to have him in our district. So, thank you.
We'll get pictures and handshakes after. How does that sound?
Okay. Okay, next we're going to do Tony. Hello, Tony. Okay, this letter says, we want to express our sincere appreciation for the outstanding work you have been doing for our district safety and security specialist. Since joining the team, your dedication to ensuring the safety and security of our students, staff, and school facilities have been exceptional. Your expertise and experience has been invaluable, an asset to the Box Elder School District. And we just really like to say thank you for all that you do. This is a lot longer than just that, so know that there's a lot more good stuff in here, so be excited to read it, okay? Thank you, Tony. Next is Sherry Harper. I don't know, do I say the whole name? Sherry, we just would also like to say thank you. We would like to take this opportunity to formally thank you for the exceptional work you did in covering for the responsibilities of the business administrator during the fall. Your dedication and attention to detail and professionalism during this time were invaluable to the continued success of Box Elder School District's financial operations. This does go on, and it says some really good things. I'll say, like, I wasn't on the board when you were up here, but I will say as a citizen, I really loved listening, and I could tell that you knew what you were doing. So if I take the hat off of the board member, just say thank you as a person in the community, because I could tell you were doing a really good job. And then with my hat back on, just thanks for stepping in and doing something that was probably really hard as well. So thank you. And now the one that I'm most embarrassed about, because I think I left it in my printer, but the girls wrestling team, are they here? Oh, good. And Jason, you're here. Do you want to stand up? This is the amazing coach. I was going to say beautiful. Handsome. This is the handsome coach. He was so good to reply to my email, so thankfully I have that information here. I wrote a really nice thing, so I'll give it to you later, and I'll sign everybody's names so that.
Can we have the girls stand up so we can see them?
Woo! And just so here's just some facts. The letter sounded better, but here you go. So there's 50 girls on the wrestling team, which I'm curious, how long has the wrestling team been going?
Can I do this, and then I just want to address the board real quick?
Okay.
If that's okay, and I'll explain all that.
Sure. Okay, 20 girls went to state, 14 placed. 5 of the 14 became state champions. So good job. And then for sure. And then I just really wanted to point out also we have 2 academic all-state winners, which are Hadley Kerrigan and Liv Meads. Are they here? Oh, well, but good job to them. And then I just really love this last thing that your coach added on. I asked him what most impressed him about his team, and it says, I am most impressed with the ability that these girls came together and became a family. They worked together to achieve this goal. Each of the 50 girls on this team did their part. Again, not every girl went to state, but each girl contributed to the win. And they did this through practice and competitions. We had great leadership and great leaders, which I just think that is so true, and I love having teams that work together, so thank you for that. That was all of them, right? Yes. Now Karen has another one.
So hey, real quick, I don't know how many of you guys were involved in the sanctioning of girls wrestling. That was 5 years ago, actually 6 years ago. And in that time, girls wrestling, again, 6 years ago, I came up in this same podium and we talked to the board and said, hey, it's been sanctioned by the state. We want Box Elder School District to have a girls wrestling team. And you guys all approved it unanimously. And I just want to thank you. Boy, these dang girls. I just want to thank you for, and again, I don't know how many of you are part of that then, but it's changed girls' lives. We started out that first year with 16 girls. This year we ended up with 50. And that's just one team. We got other teams over in Logan that have, 20, they have anywhere from 20 to 50, 60 teams, or girls on each team. So it's changed these girls' lives. And, we all like athletics, and athletics does great things, but the most important thing is it teaches life lessons. And I believe that if it wasn't for you guys approving girls wrestling, it wouldn't have been able to touch these girls' lives the way it has. So I wanted to come up and thank you for the efforts and everything and the support you've given us. And answer your question, it's been 5 years. 5 years we've been sanctioned. So again, thanks very much.
Would those who have been recognized thus far just stick around until after this next thing, and we'd love to shake all of your hands and get some pictures if that's all right.
I have the opportunity and privilege to just do a short introduction to Warren Jensen, who is this year's Northern Utah Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year. Warren is a junior at Bear River High School. He's involved in the engineering programs and the STEM programs, and he's working to complete and earn his construction management certificate with BTech next year. He's lived in Tremonton his whole life, and he works at the Boys and Girls Club in Garland and mentors other students. He's very family-oriented, kind, and positive, and he was the Youth of the Year that represented our Northern Utah Boys and Girls Club, along with 5 others that were at the Capitol on March 3rd. And he will also be recognized and introduced at the Jazz Game on April 9th. So with that, we will let Warren come up, and we're grateful for the opportunity for you to come and share your thoughts with us tonight.
Grade school. I'm a junior at Bear River High, and I get pretty good grades. I'm in the FFA. I like gaming online with friends. I love classic rock, and all in all, my life's pretty good. I learned hard work when I was really young. Watching my mom work the post plant and my dad work the Walmart distribution center, I saw that working hard for your family is good, and I found good in doing it myself. I was lucky to attend the Boys and Girls Club when it was held at Garland Elementary. At the club, I connected with both school and club staff, so when my parents divorced, I had adults in my life to keep me on track. When my parents divorced, the club made sure my homework was done and I had time to run and play before going home, making it easier for my dad to work long hours and still take care of us. When my dad remarried and my mom was back, my dad made sure I saw them both, showing me the importance of family, forgiveness, and moving on. With new older and younger siblings, my stepmom became a huge part of my life, and she experienced kidney failure at the same time COVID hit. As a family of small kids, we were quarantined at home. But due to COVID, I could continue with school as I helped with the younger kids. Family and friends in our small town would deliver groceries and whatever else we needed so we can stay safe. I had plenty of time with the little kids, keeping them entertained and helping around the house however I could so my stepmom could rest. I'm lucky that my friends and I had already started gaming online so I could stay connected with them and the outside when my world shrank to the size of my home. 2 years ago, my stepmom got a transplant. I was itching to get back to club but had to wait a little longer till full strength and stability returned. I am grateful that through this experience I have learned what is really important. Family, friends, and health. Most people don't have the opportunity to learn this lesson by 16. Due to my stepmom's returning health, I was able to get back to normal school and get back to the club just in time for my junior year. I love helping out at the club. I love getting to know the kids and giving them the good life I have. I love participating in the FFA. I still love gaming online with friends. I am in the engineering program at high school, and I want to go into something working with my head and my hands. The future I have because of the club is brighter and better than without it. No matter what I do, I will always stay near family. Like I said before, my life is good. And I don't say that because I'm stupid or simple. I'm here to say that it's a choice and it takes hard work and intelligence to make a good life. And I'm committed to both. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin. That was touching. Thanks. Mark, did I call you the wrong name? Okay, I called you Mr. Story's name. I'm so sorry. Warren, thanks. I'm sorry about that. Warren, would you join us first? And then Mr. Story, would you come after Warren? We'll just move up. Mr. Federber, did I say that correctly? Federber. Thank you. Would you come after that, then Sherry, and then the girls wrestling team last? Would that be all right? or here, I'll go behind Danielle has a question. Thanks, everyone. That is always the best part of this meeting. We have a new business administrator, and we need to, you need to take the oath of office, Mr. Stevens. And I didn't realize this would be part of my responsibility, but I get to be the one to do that with you. So where would you, do we,
think right out
right
in
down
front
here?
of
Okay.
I think it needs to be made mention that Neil and I did not plan our dress today. It just, we just showed up and that's the way it worked out, so. Yeah.
Business administrator,
Business Administrator,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we are really privileged to have Neil Stevens join our leadership team here at Box Elder. He jumped in with both feet, actually head first probably, and got going immediately, and we really appreciate his work. Okay, good. We've got a good list of. Oh, thank you. Skipped right over. Do I have an approval of the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to public comment. I'm going to read a statement before we start these, so each of you on this that signed your name on this list, if you'll just listen to this for just a moment, and we'll get started with public comment. The floor is open at this time for any resident of the Box Elder County to address the Board of Education on items pertaining to education and or the operation of the school district. Participants will be given the opportunity to address the board in the order in which you signed up. Individual presentations during this segment of the meeting are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Group presentations are restricted to a maximum of 6 minutes. When possible, response to the questions or comments will be provided at this time. If additional study is needed to respond adequately to the questions or comments, the residents will receive a written response as soon as possible. The written response will be read publicly at the next regular meeting of the Board of Education. Due to the rights of privacy of the employees of the district, the Board of Education will not, will not discuss specific employee appointments, employment, or performance at this time. Questions and complaints or charges against particular employees are to be referred to the superintendent for action consistent with the law and or district policy. Okay. All right, Chelsea McFarland. First.
I just wanted to read a quote. I was in the last meeting with you guys. I just got this sat in, and I thought it was very interesting. There's a quote from Genevieve R. Curtis. She worked for like the PTA and helped found it a long time ago. I'm also the PTA president at ACYI. She says, many things for which we spend public money may be postponed. We may interrupt the building of a bridge, the improving of a road, and 10 years later go on with it about where we left off. But if we interrupt public training for children and 10 years later go on with it about where we left off, we find them grown up and grown up wrong. We cannot say to a child, next year we shall see about improving your instruction and health. Next year we shall provide a course in citizenship which fits your society's pressing problems. Tomorrow I shall try to understand your heart and gain your confidence. For the child it is a matter of now or never. The child cannot grow up twice. And in the last meeting you guys were talking about the building of schools and moving kids around, and I think that it's very important for the community to know that you guys are trying to make it so that children do grow up, that we have this one chance. to help them grow up in the best opportunity that we can give them. And we just, we keep pushing it down the road, like you guys said earlier. And today is the day to make that action. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McFarland. Okay, Emily Jolly.
Good evening. My name is Emily Jolly, and I live in the neighborhood by North Park Elementary School. I stand in front of you with other mothers who are active members of the community. We dedicate our time volunteering in many capacities. Some include PTA, church, community council, room moms, chaperones, coaches, etc. I understand that unlocking the gates is on the next month's agenda at North Park Elementary School. However, our community has been waiting for this issue to be resolved for at least a year, as far as what I know. April is too close to the end of the school year, and it's too far into spring for us. Jessie Archibald has lived in her home right across the street from North Park Elementary School for 52 years. She says, I need it open for me, and I need it open for my grandkids for when they come to visit. We want to have a resolution to this issue as soon as possible. When I moved to North Park Community 6 years ago, I saw elderly people walking the loop of the sidewalks, children playing kickball by the backstop and enjoying the playground. There were people sitting beneath the trees as well. I thought to myself, what an incredible neighborhood that I moved into. I don't want to harp on the impact that removing this gathering ground has had on us. I think you can use your imagination. There is a sign posted by the playground that reads, Rules for Use of School Grounds. I have this, you guys can have this too, I can send it to you, whatever, I can pass it around, that's fine too. But this is something that's right by that playground, right by the school ground. You can see there's the buddy bench right there. So this is the playground right on North Park Elementary School. And it says, Rules for Use of School Grounds. You are welcome to use the school grounds in keeping with the following regulations. It says, no one is permitted on school grounds after dark. Improper conduct or cheating or creating a public disturbance of any kind is prohibited. No alcoholic beverages permitted, no loitering or vandalism, no vehicles permitted outside parking areas, and directions of security guard must be followed. This is our community park. We are welcome to use it. This is my understanding that the BELT team has been exploring liability issues, and the next step is to create a play-at-your-own-risk type of sign releasing the district of any liability. The safety of children should be our top priority. Our neighbor, Laura Wheatley, mom of 7, said, just yesterday, several children who live in full view of the school were playing in this beautiful spring weather. One of the smallest was nearly hit by a car because they were playing on the sidewalks, passing by driveways instead of being allowed to play in the park right next to their home. End quote. I am sad to point out that this school district needs all the positive publicity it can get. This olive branch may garner more support for the school's relationship with the community. I have one question for you. Will you please open up North Park Elementary School to our community again? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Jolly. Sarah Munns.
My name is Sarah Munns, and my kids have the opportunity to walk to school. I was bused to that same school from 85 to 98, 70 miles, like a day. So I tell them every day I earn the right for them to walk to school. I never say never. I left Box Elder County for 23 years. I was never going to come back, right? But I did, and I'm so happy to be raising my 2 kids there by myself. And we loved living there, like being there by the park. It enhances our life, it enhances in the community's life, and the 3 of us, we literally can see the whole playground. I live and work from home. They both work from home, so we have our thumb on the pulse of that playground, and we want to give our support to you that we will help take care of it, or like lock it up at dark, like I don't know, but we just really want our kids to be able to play at the playground. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Naomi Whitman.
So this is from one of our anonymous neighbors. She says, when we first moved to the neighborhood, we were excited to live close to the school. We went to the school playground frequently. My kids love jumping on the alphabet letters and the painted maps. It was a really good and safe place to learn to ride bikes and to meet up with others in the neighborhood. Elderly ladies met up there in the mornings to walk together. When my son started sped preschool at North Park, it was already a familiar and safe place to him. I appreciate efforts to keep the school grounds safe for children, but I feel keeping it locked up after hours is excessive and frustrating to the community. We now have to walk quite a bit further to get to a playground. It is the city's North Park. It is a nice place, but gets very busy with baseball games and does not have the educational aspects built into the park. We also have to cross a busy road to get to it, so I feel it isn't as safe. Reopening the playground to the community would send a message that the school cares about and appreciates and wants to connect with the community members. It would show that community members are welcome and encouraged to be involved in school events, like literacy nights and in their children's education. It would be a big visual way of telling students and families they are welcome and trusted, and they are on the same team as the school staff. I believe having it locked up sends the opposite message to parents and families and shows a lack of trust in the neighborhood. She asked, please reopen the playground to the neighborhood as soon as possible. It would be so good to have it as a place of connection again. And then from my own standpoint as a mother and a member of the community, I feel that it does need to be open. I know that there are concerns that you guys have with it, but I believe the benefits of the community area, such as promoting physical activity, mental well-being, fostering social connections, and enhancing the environment, much far outweigh those concerns. And I know that as an educator of the whole child, it is our job to make the most benefit for our children.
Thank you. Alan Norton. Gosh, I'm sorry about that.
First of all, I want to say before I get started, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Carlson wears that suit better because I think it's the hair. I'm just saying.
What would Keith look like in this suit?
Well, Keith needs a suit too. So, just as I promised, I told Mr. Carlson I'd be here in person to give him a public apology. When I sent you that email, I thought I did include to ask you to meet with my son and the other young man, but I removed that piece because I didn't know I didn't ask Marcus and the other young man if that was a good idea. So as I promised, and I told the school board as well, so I'm here to keep my promise, give you a public apology that I did not send you an invite to meet with them. And moving forward, I'm going to, hopefully, I'm still going to send an invite to meet with the school board, because as I sat here and listened to others, you listened to others, but you didn't listen to me about my concern. And you send me a policy that I had no idea about. I couldn't make any remarks 7 years ago. I couldn't do that because I didn't know, and that's the key. And I will say this to the school board. In my heart, I know that nobody meant for this to happen to these two young men. I don't think that was the intent by anybody. But there were some big mistakes that were made, and I'm going to continue to ask for you guys to meet with me in person to talk about what happened. And I'm going to continue to do that until you do so, because there are concerns. And I feel like you guys, and you told me in the email that the matter was closed. But I don't know how that is when you haven't heard my side. And I don't want to do it through an email. I want to do it in person. So you have a true understanding of what had happened. Okay? And I'm going to move forward, not with anger, not with hatred, because I don't have time for that. None of us do. But it is frustrating because you did tell me the matter's closed. But you know what? Like a friend of mine said, the matter's not closed for my son. He's going to live with this for a very long time. And I continue to have problems getting him to school, no matter what we try to do, because he lives with that. He lives with what happened. How do you explain that to a young man with autism who already struggles with all the other things that he struggles with? So can you guys please help me to understand how I can do that? Help me to understand. I mean, you guys said, so I'm here to ask. What can we do?
Mr. Norton, that's a good question, but this is not a time for discussion, and I'm hearing you. I want you to know I'm hearing you.
And I agree with you. You're right, it's not. But when you tell me the matter's closed, that makes it really hard, so. But I apologize, Mr. Carlson. Mr. Stevens, I hope you get a haircut, just like Mr. Carlson.
Marianne Cox.
Hi, I'm here to talk about the plan that's being proposed about grade realignments in buildings. And I had a whole lot prepared, and then I went and sat in your work session, which was super helpful. And it was very good for me to kind of hear and see your plan. Is there a way to put that slide up? Okay, all right. I asked if they could put that up. I'm here because I don't like the idea of putting the 9th grade in the high school for so many reasons. For social reasons, for emotional reasons. I'm super concerned that even though we say we're preserving electives, I'm afraid that that influx of students is going to affect electives. I have a fear that we're going to hear about going to semesters instead of trimesters and going to AB days to solve those issues, and that would reduce 8 electives over 4 years. I don't want to see that. I'm not saying that's what you're saying is going to happen. I'm saying there are ripple effects to that that possibly can't be addressed until it's too late to do that. My big concern is that the money that we can get through truth in taxation is being used on what had the least amount of support instead of the most. And I understand, like, the survey results, like I looked over all of those, I went to every bond meeting that you did, I read every single email. I am trying to be informed so hard, trying to understand. And I understand you help me see that there are several things at play, and you are just trying to address like multiple needs going on at once. But, oh, sorry, it disappeared right when I was going to shoot. Anyway, I can see, I don't have time. Oh my goodness. I can see that there's a phased plan. I can see that that takes 15 years to get there. What I don't understand, and what a lot of people that I have spoken to don't understand, is why building huge additions at the high school is the first step. You said in there that we don't have the money to build 2 new middle schools because that would be $100 million. And yet this plan does not have you building both of those at the same time. This plan has Bear River Middle School being built, and then 5 years later, Box Elder Middle School being built. And Stephanie mentioned, like, why can't we shift these phases up? If the thing that got the most reason to support the bond was addressing the age and the size, or the age and the situation of the middle schools, you can still address the elementaries over here with $25 million, and you build Bear River Middle School phase 1. You make replacing Box Elder Middle School phase 2, and you said, well, we're not going to build 100 kid schools like your original bond proposal. That's true. You're now going to build 900 to 1,000 kid schools, right? Like, because you're going to make 2 middle schools, which makes total sense. But right now, they're housing 1,200 kids. So you could build a school, or here's an idea. You could build a 1,200 kid school for this much more than a 900 kid school. It might go from, I don't know, 40 million to 45 million or whatever to make it from this 900 kids to 1,200 kids on the same piece of property to accommodate and keep the same grade bands. And you don't have to build additions at the high school with that money. You don't have to build both middle schools at the exact same time. There's options here that would get those middle schools built sooner than additions at the high school that are not as dire of a need. And there are so many people in this community that while there may be 35% that support that, there was 30% that didn't, and there was a 40% indifference, which I don't really know that it's fair to say that means that they'd be okay with it. It just means for the bond, that was an indifference. I don't know if they'd be indifferent if they heard that it's going to be 15 more years before the middle school buildings are addressed. I understand you'll be pulling 9th graders from those middle schools, and that will alleviate. But if you're going to you could build a 2-grade middle school for Bear River Middle School and make a plan that makes that not crowded and all the elbowing and all the things you were talking about. And they're like, everything you said in there was legitimate concerns. But you're still choosing to take the money that we do have and doing not the highest need or the highest priority from your stakeholders based on that survey and based on the bond. I know I'm out of time. I appreciate you listening to me, and if there's any way to either come to another work session or in some way for me to further say because my accountant brain was going crazy in there with all of your slides, and it was awesome. And I don't know if there's any other way, but rather than coming next month to the school board meeting. So do you have any other way for me to get? Okay, I will do that. Or anybody else. Thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Anna Marie Hall.
I'm the PTA president at Lakeview Elementary. I'm on the community council. And I just wanted to stand for just 2 minutes and 53 seconds, but I won't take that long. And just remind you of Lakeview and remind you of the need at Lakeview. Our teachers are going without. They're going without prep. They're doing their preps in their classroom. We need, I call it putting lipstick on a pig. And I'm running out of lipstick to put on the pig. We're running out. There's not so much left. We are able to, we finally got art back at Lakeview through the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Foundation. But where do we put our art teacher? Where do we put our computers? Where do we put our science? How do we increase our children's education? How do we encourage them to come to school, not just for testing, but to create a sense of community? We need space, and we need that space now. We needed it yesterday. So whatever we need to do to get the portables we need it, and we need it today. I understand the portables are a Band-Aid, but I've talked to many teachers, and the morale at the school, if we could get our preps back, if we could get our time, that for the teachers, I think that would change tremendously. It would change the behavior issues. It would give them a place to be. It would encourage the children to come to school to do other things besides just sit. I know there's problems, concerns about green space. My degree's in environmental studies. I understand the importance of green space. We have plenty of green space at Lakeview. We have plenty of green space, and I know that whatever portables we have, whatever we can do, those portables will allow for a betterment of the entire community. And that's one thing we've been trying to do at Lakeview this year, is to create more of a sense of community, a sense of area where the children can come and learn and grow together. But I encourage you, and whatever we need to do, I'll make you some cookies. I'll do some, I might even buy the cookies. Sometimes you just run out of time. But I've talked to Julie, I've talked to Corey. I found a portable in Salt Lake. It might not be exactly what it is, but it's cheaper than what we could do it for. But I just would encourage you in the last 27 seconds that I have to make our Lakeview Elementary, our school built in 1962, give these children the chance that they deserve, and the teachers give them the tools they need to be the best teachers, because we do have the best teachers at Lakeview. But we can do better, and we can help them by giving them the space that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate those of you that have come for public comment and for the time you've taken to be here with us. Thank you. We are going to move on to our action items. Corey Thompson, our facilities director.
Okay, thank you. So I have two recommendations that are to go before the board today. I guess we could go architect first. It's the first one on there. If you could please click on that one. Back in January, during a work session, I was asked to go through the process to obtain an architect and a general contractor, construction manager for additions at Boxelder High School and Bear River High School to add the 9th grade. We went through that process. It was a pretty quick timeline. We just did interviews on Monday and Tuesday, yesterday and Monday. Finally was able to finalize and notify the firms today, and so I bring that to you today. We have, if you could scroll up a bit, please. So we have the two high schools, Bear River, and we have three high schools in the district, but we're looking primarily at Box Elder High School and Bear River High School. Because they are such different projects, we scored the proposals separately, and we ended up with separate architects for Bear River High School and Box Elder High School, and separate general contractors for both. So this first one, the architect, going through the process, we had 2 board members, we had 2 high school principals, myself, and other district representatives, so we ended up with 9 people on that selection committee. And after the scoring process, it came out that KMA architectural firm was the top scoring firm to do the addition on Bear River High School, and NGRA architectural firm is the top scoring firm to do the addition at Box Elder High School. Any questions? I could go into a lot more detail, but just whatever questions.
I have a question. We have on there procedural implications and staff implications. Is there a way we could get note of the financial implications?
Yeah, so this is a tough one because these are custom modifications to these buildings. When we were going through this in the summer for the bond, we were looking at middle schools, and we were looking at plans that had already been designed. And so they knew the square footage, they knew what was going to be in them, and it was a lot easier to come up with those costs. This is a little bit different because we're saying 9th grade going to the high schools. Bear River and Box Elder High Schools are such different configuration. There will be some different needs at each high school. Bear River High School is a much tighter campus, and so it will require some different approaches to how that remodel would take place. Our rough guess, and this is from talking with architects and contractors at various times, our best guess is between 30 and 35 million. So we're roughly saying between 60 and 70 million. It depends on what components are needed at each school. We'll go through that design process, not in a vacuum. We're going to have representatives from the schools, stakeholder representatives, along with the architect and construction manager, general contractors that can all give input for this so that we're not just guessing on the design. That being said, there might be one type of facility that one high school needs that the other one doesn't. We're not saying that we're going to split the cost right down the middle and give equal to both. We're saying that we need to provide the academic needs at both high schools. Does that help? Okay.
Corey, I want to be clear that it does not include furniture to furnish those classrooms, and it doesn't include design fees of the architectural firms as well.
Correct.
The 30 to 35 million is only for construction purposes.
And I was asking for the fees that it would cost to incur their design right now. Like,
The
if
design
we-
process right now.
if we select these firms, what are we into it?
So we have a cost proposal from the construction managers, general contractors. The way that the architects are paid is a percentage of the cost of construction. There's a general rule of thumb that is throughout the state that if it is a cookie cutter, we say we like that building from that architectural firm, go build it on that lot, and we make 0 modifications. It's roughly about 4% of the construction cost. If we hire an architect, which is going to be what this is, and we say, this is our need, and they have to custom design it, send it out to engineering. It's a brand new build, not one that's been done before. It's roughly about 6% of the design cost. If it's a somewhat of a modification, and 6% of the construction cost, thank you. I'll give Golden Spike Elementary as an example of this. That design is a design that's been built elsewhere in the state. So we're taking a school design that is not custom to us, but we made modifications to it. We lengthened out the gym space, we widened out the commons area, and we added, I believe, 8 additional classrooms. So because we did a partial modification, that came in at about 5% of the construction cost is what went to the architects.
And then on the,
Yeah.
you'll go over that with the general contractors on that one?
Yeah, so I can just address that now. So the general contractors, when they submit their proposal to us, they have to include their cost proposal as a separate document to their proposal of their firm. Those range in cost, but it's going to cover their general conditions for their construction, and then there's going to be a percentage, and that percentage can range from 1% to 2.5% of the construction cost. So that varies too, and we take that into consideration when we do the selection. But that's why it's hard to say an exact number of what that's going to cost, because we can say it's going to be, let's say, 2% of the construction cost, and if the construction cost is $35 million, then we would know what that is. But let's say that the construction cost on bid date comes out at $32 million or $37 million. That's going to vary a bit. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm trying to write as fast
Okay.
as you speak.
Okay. I could speak slow. I'm kidding. Had to bring a little levity.
Thank you, Corey.
Okay.
Corey, if
Any
I
other
could, and I'd like you to follow along and correct me wherever you need to. Corey, when we do this, every district in the state has to follow the Utah State Board of Education's procurement guidelines.
Correct.
Which are quite stringent. And Corey's worked with them now a couple times in the last 6 months to go through this process. And as you go through this process, those of us who were on that committee probably, 3 weeks ago received all the books from each one of the companies, both architects and the construction companies. We had basically a rubric of how to score the companies, and we had to sit down, read their books, and go through and score them according to, I believe, 5 areas in one, and then the other was 4 areas. Am I right there?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. And at the end, then we scored them, and then that was determined whether or not even to interview. If they didn't score high enough, those companies were not interviewed. But if they scored high enough, they did. So Monday and Tuesday, we interviewed, correct me if I'm wrong here, 6 architects.
7 architects
7.
and 4 construction firms.
Okay, so it was a lot, and a lot of books, and it took a long time to score them when looking at the books. And then to continue with that rubric, a portion of the final score was based on the interviews. And as the companies came in, we asked them to spend 45 minutes and explain why we should select them. And they put on a really great show, and it was one of the harder things that I do. You know, when we interview a lot, but we interview people, and usually it seems to me there's always been somebody that rises to the top when you interview, but these companies are such good companies, all of them, and they do such great work, and They all work in education. They have buildings to show you throughout the state, and they just do a great job. And so at the end of the day, we selected who we selected based on there was 2 or 3 points in there. I mean, like, it was bizarre.
I compared it to Olympic trials
Yeah.
when they're
And so
close.
each one of the 9 people on that committee, you know, whatever score they gave them in each area was meaningful. And so at the end, came up with this. They then, the procurement office tells you how to go through this whole process, how to select them, and then Corey gets the incredible opportunity to call up, in this case, 4 companies and say, hey, you've got the business with us, but that left seven companies that he got to call up and say, thank you very much, and this is really a competitive situation, and quite often we get grammar requests to make sure, you know, so they can learn from it, and we appreciate that. And so it takes Corey and Corey's office, which is he and his secretary, a lot of time and effort to, you know, to go through this, to cross T's, dot I's, and to make sure everything's according to state code.
Thank you. Yes.
I move that KMA architectural firm be approved for the remodel of Bear River High School and NJRA architect firm be approved for the remodel of Box Elder High School for 9th grades and grant authority to Neil Stevens and Corey Thompson to negotiate appropriate fees.
I have a question. I'm sorry. I thought you were asking a question. I'm so sorry. I have one more.
Okay.
I don't know. I might have more. Who knows? Okay. So if.
Point of order.
Oh.
When there's a motion made, the second can be made, and then there's time for discussion there.
Oh, okay.
So is that?
I'll make a second.
Okay, so now I can. I'm sorry. I wasn't gonna say that today. So, so my question is how long do we have to make this decision? Do we have to make this decision to approve this tonight?
Stephanie, I'm glad you asked. I've been sitting here thinking, would you explain, please, the process of why we do this now, even though the board has not made a decision to go and voted to go to truth and taxation, right?
Yeah.
That's where your concern is that,
Yeah, a
that
little
the
bit.
final, why we do this step right now. And this happened before the bond, and this happened a long time ago when plans were drawn up for a Western Tremont Elementary School. So this is just part of that process, and it happens at a weird time, right, if you're not familiar. So
I guess the second part to that, though, to add on is just why don't we get the same thing for an elementary school if that's on the plan as well?
Okay. Yeah, good question. So the simpler question that I'll answer was your second one. Why aren't we doing our elementaries at the same time? Because as you saw in the work session, since the bond didn't pass and we still have issues in our schools, then this plan is evolving. And the first step to that came out in December and then in the January work session is the high school or not just high school, but the transitions. So right now we have 4 transitions for students, and every one of those transitions is a life change for these kiddos. If we can reduce that down to 3, then that's 1 less transition for these kiddos to go from elementary to middle to high versus elementary, intermediate, middle, high. So that was the initial that Mr. Meekum brought out, and he can explain it much better than me. But now, as you saw the plan evolved and talked more about it in the work session, we know that the elementaries would also be part of this. So when you tell me to, we'll go through that process too. There may need to be some more discussion on that.
And don't we already have a plan, like an architectural plan for the West Tremont Elementary? Or do we still need to go out for architect for that as well?
The answer to that is yes and possibly. So the West Tremont property, west of McDonald's, for those of you over by Liberty Foods, I think is where it's at. I think that, yeah, I'm trying to get my brain wrapped around Google Maps. So that property is fully developed. It has utilities stubbed in. It's ready to build. We had an architect and a general contractor selected at that time. So the design process has been taken care of for that school. It was a custom design. Has not been built before. So that site is ready to be built on. At that time, it was determined that there wasn't sufficient enrollment increase to go ahead and build that building, so it was tabled. To answer the question fully, could we go back and just take that same architect and that same contractor and go build that building? Mr. Stevens and I have talked about that. We would have to consult with the state to find out if there's a, what would it be called, a statute of limitations, a time frame of how long we could still use those two firms, even though they were selected at that time and then it was tabled. So there's some technicalities in there we would need to look at. Also, the design for that building is now, that was in 2017, so we are 8 years old. Those plans would have to go back to the engineers to make sure that everything's up to code. To new code, to current code. Another thing with that plan is the way it was designed, it has an office space for the principal, and it has a conference room in the office. So it's not the same plan as 3 Mile Creek, Garland, and Fielding, but it has the same type of spaces. Now you look at our elementary schools, we have a principal and often an assistant principal. We have a counselor, maybe even 2 counselors on a bigger school. We have more support staff. That building design likely wouldn't accommodate at this time. And so we need to revisit that building design and say, well, we've got to add an office in there for an assistant principal. We have to have an office in there for a counselor. We have to have a conference room in there. We've got to have this many spaces for special education, for support staff, for speech therapy, some itinerant offices. And so when we start doing that, then we need to ask ourselves, okay, do we take that same design and try to work with the state and use the same architect and contractor? Or would we be just as well off to go back out to this selection process and find a design that is currently designed, that is what they call a cookie cutter, that already has that in there. The site is, I think, 10 or 11 acres-ish, which is great for an elementary school. We could probably take any design from any architect out there and put it on that site. So it's just that balancing act of how to go about that with that West Tremont. Okay, so with time frame, and we're talking about architect right now. The next one is general contractor, well, construction manager, general contractor, CMGC. We have 2 gentlemen at the back. So we have Rob Birch and Dave Anderson. They are with Hogan Construction, so they're on the next one. They're dressed in flannel because they are ready to work. They're ready to go. And so they can help out with this time frame too. But when you look at the cycle of construction, with anything, but especially when you look at these big builds, there are opportune times to actually go out to bid on those. That opportune time, what I've been told, and they can correct me, is sometime around midwinter, December, January, is when you would get your best prices, because firms have typically wrapped up work they've done, and they're hungry. They're looking for that next project, for the next summer that's coming up, and they're ready to work again, and their schedules are more open, and so you're going to get a better cost. So that would be looking in January of next year. So you're saying, well, okay, why are we doing it right now? It's because these are such possibly complex and custom designs to approach and build, that we need this much time to actually design those and get them out. Now, it's possible that we could say we're going to wait until August when you vote on truth and taxation. If we do that, it takes me a couple of months because we started like the day after I was told to get an architect and general contractor is about when I started this process after the January work session. And just today, I was finally able to notify those who were the high scores. So if we did that in August, that's going to be October. And if we wanted to say we're on a time crunch, here's our architect, here's our general contractor, go design us a building. That alone would be a tight time frame, and that's in a vacuum. This way it gives us an opportunity to involve people from each high school, people from the communities, people from the school board, and really get some stakeholders involved in that so that the end product is, we have a higher probability of meeting the needs that are out there. Does that help? Okay. I usually don't talk this long when I'm up here, so I'm really uncomfortable.
So Corey,
Yes.
So help me here. So what Stephanie was saying, that if we're going to, I mean, if I know there's a lot of ifs here, in the future, if we add on to Discovery, and was it McKinley as well? Was that, am I correct? I'm sorry, what was that?
For building the school.
Yeah, building West Tremont.
Well, addition to Discovery, I mean, that wouldn't be as complicated to do, so you don't necessarily need an architect or anything like right now for that? I mean, I'm just
there wouldn't
asking.
be as much design in that, because to add on to Discovery, the conversation has been more around additional classrooms and a gymnasium to take the load off of the current gym and cafetorium. So.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and the elementary school would most likely, for fiscal responsibility, we would pick a design that's already been designed, or the one
So you're
that we
saying
have.
the two ninth grade additions, if we go that route, are more complicated to do to fit them into each school, and so
Oh,
it's-
yes.
we have to pick the person now.
Yeah,
if we
much-
choose to go down that
Much
road.
more. Well, if
Okay.
we're going to hit that optimal bid window,
Uh-huh.
January, now's
Now's
the
the time to
right
do it.
time. We'd
Okay.
want to get started on those designs right away.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, we have a motion from Board Member Wright and a second from Board Member Smith. Any more discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm voting no in representing my constituents and the citizens of the district who, by an overwhelming majority, about 69%, voted against a bond just 4 months ago, which included, in part, the remodeling of the two high schools and the associated increase in property taxes, indicating this is not something they want or can afford at this time, and also representing the numerous community members who have communicated with me over the past 2 months. They are very opposed to this project and/or associated increase in their property taxes that it will require if this project is pursued.
Okay, noted. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next. Oh, motion passes. Sorry.
Thank you. So it'd be the next one with CMGC.
I move that Westland Construction be approved for remodel at Bear River High School, and Hogan's Construction be approved for the remodel of Box Elder High School for 9th grades, and grant authority to Neil Stevens and Corey Thompson to negotiate appropriate fees.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any discussion on this one? Sorry, I'm new to this. I'll get it. Any discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No, for the same reasons.
Okay. All right, this motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Corey. Next, we have the change of date for the April board meeting. Do you want to?
I mentioned this, we talked about it last month so that everybody could be ready for this. In the April board meeting on the 9th, Neil and I have to be at the state spring meetings on the morning of the 10th in St. George, Utah, to talk about the legislative updates. This is the one time a year where the business administrators and the superintendents go together. The State Board of Education leadership comes and we discuss all of the new legislation. And because we have to be there at the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm asking the board if they would please move the date back 1 week to the 16th. And I think with moving it back, if people look, they'll see that it isn't that night, it is a week later. So that's my recommendation.
I make a motion that we approve.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes.
Just a comment, a little reminder.
Okay, well,
on
yeah,
those,
we will.
for those of us that have poor memories.
We'll definitely do that.
All right, moving on to our information items. We have Catherine Allen is going to be a presenter for district use of seclusionary rooms.
Good evening, everybody. I am going to just speak for just a few minutes about seclusionary timeout. I just wanted to start with reminding what we do before we go there. Okay, so in all of our schools, all the way from preschool all the way up through our post-high, which those are students who go until they are 22 years of age, we use MTSS. That is for general ed, special ed, all ed. MTSS is multi-tiered system of supports. It's a framework for implementing systematic, evidence-based practices to maximize student achievement in academics and behavior and deliver rapid additional support to students who need it. Okay, next. Thanks. PBIS, these are plans that every one of our schools are implementing. These are positive behavior interventions and support. These are tiered behavioral instruction and intervention. We try to be proactive, preventative, and efficient in what we are doing. The 4 things that we are really trying to address in that is establishing expectation and rules, explicitly teaching those expectations and rules, reinforcing those expectations and rules, and using correct behavioral to correct those behavioral errors. Okay, emergency safety interventions. This is something that has become more prevalent recently. In our old school board rules, they did not really discuss emergency safety interventions. This is something new. So I have been asked what's the difference between a few years ago compared to now. This is one of those things, emergency safety interventions. Go ahead, Keith. Seclusionary timeout is one of those kinds of interventions, okay? So here's the definition of seclusionary timeout. If a student is placed in a safe and closed area by school personnel in accordance with the requirements of the Utah Code. They are purposefully isolated from adults and peers, and they are prevented from leaving or reasonably believe that they are prevented from leaving an enclosed area. Okay, that's the basic definition. Can you go to the next one? Okay, here are some of the rules that go along with seclusionary timeout. It can only be used when a student presents an immediate danger of serious physical harm to self or others. The space must facilitate continuous monitoring. It needs to have a window that permits staff to be able to monitor, and or the staff need to remain in the room. So seclusionary timeout doesn't necessarily need to be a little enclosed space. It could also be a classroom, for example, if we have to do a room clear and all of the other students are required to leave the room to keep everyone safe and that student can't get out. the adult needs to stay in the room with them. Okay, that's what that means, being in the room with the student. The door must have a self-releasing latch that releases automatically if it's physically not held. So what that means is if they are put into a seclusionary timeout room, staff member has to hold a lock on the door. You cannot lock the door and walk away. You have to stand there and hold that door. If you let go of that lock, then the door can be opened from either side, okay? And no, that has always been a thing. The maximum duration of a single instance, that's not saying a day, that's saying a single instance of timeout in one little block of time is 30 minutes. At that point, the parents or the guardian need to be informed immediately that their student has been there at that long. Okay? You asking a question? Okay. Just doing this. All right. Let's talk about what seclusionary timeout is not. Seclusionary timeout is not a calming corner. It is not a place where kids can go reset. It is not, if a student is overwhelmed or they're overstimulated and they need to just go somewhere quiet, lots of our buildings, in fact, most of our buildings have a place for students to go. A lot of our classrooms have their own little built-in corner where students can go reset, regroup. That is not seclusionary timeout. If it doesn't meet that former criteria of those three things, it is not seclusionary timeout. Okay? I think there's only one more slide. Okay, hold on. I did not put this in the slides, but let me just briefly go over some of the Board of Education rules that have changed over the years. Yes, thank you, not our rules, the State Board of Education rules. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Most of that is definitions. They've just gotten a little more clear on some of the definitions. There are things that they talk about chemical restraints. We do not go there at all in any way, shape, or form. Some of them talk about mechanical restraints. The only kinds of mechanical restraints we use in our district are typically on the bus, and that is when a student wears a harness. Like a preschool student has a harness, or a student who physically can't maintain their posture on a bus. They need to have something that helps support them. Or some of our little friends are Houdinis and they can get out of a regular seatbelt and they are unsafe moving around on a bus. If we have a lock on a seatbelt, which we do on with some of our students, that's considered a mechanical restraint because the student can't just get out of the seatbelt on their own. Those kinds of things are never determined without the parent's permission, and it is always for safety. We do not use any other kinds of mechanical restraints in classrooms. Okay? So let me also define the difference between a student who maybe uses a stander and they have to have like the straps to help them stay up in it, or they're in a wheelchair and they need to have a harness to help them sit up. Those are not considered mechanical restraints from us. That's just a part of their typical things that they need. Okay? One of the things that has been defined is the use of, we call it a FUBA, which is a functional behavior assessment. That was not really a part of anything a few years ago. It was not a requirement. Now it is a requirement. A FUBA, or a functional behavior assessment, is an assessment that we do to determine why is a student having some of these behaviors. Now, this is something that you have to have parent permission to perform. We can't just go do that on our own. So if there are students who have not had that, there's a lot of reasons why they may not have received that, okay? That is new, a new requirement. It's not a new thing, it's been around for a long time, but it's a new requirement. I'm just gonna kind of go through a couple of quick ones, because there's a lot of things that don't really, they're more definition-y. Talking about different types of restraints, there are prohibitions on prone, supine, air restricting restraints. We do not do that at all. If a student is laying on the floor and they are not doing it, we just step away. We do not restrain students on the floor at all. We do not do any kinds of restraints that would restrict breathing at all. We do not train our staff on that. The training they receive is, we don't do that. Okay, so that is not something that we ever do. And
Can I ask you a question?
yes,
there?
please do, Karen.
So if you have a student that is laying on the floor acting out and you're not doing anything, do you call the parent? Do you just wait out the student? What are teachers supposed to do?
That's that feels like a really simple question, but it's actually kind of a bigger question. A really simple answer to that is typically we wait them out. We give them directions, and then we wait them out. As far as do we call the parent, it depends on the situation and if they have a behavior plan already in place, if this is a new behavior, if it's something that we've been working on for a while. So that's why that's a little bit bigger than to just answer. But most of the time, if they're on the floor kind of acting out, doing whatever they're doing, we wait them out. Or ignore the behavior, prompt them. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Did that answer? Okay. One of the new things that is really pertinent is we now have details on what a physical restraint is. It didn't used to be in our rules, and it is only used in emergencies. We very, very rarely restrain kids at all. And in fact, I think in my entire career, I think I've done it once. And it was a student who was literally attacking another individual. So it was to keep that other individual safe. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, it also depends on the age of the kid, right? So a 5-year-old is really different than like a 17-year-old. But for example, if we have two students who are fighting, we get in between them. If you have two adults, you try to divide and conquer. Get one to have the student go that way, another one to go that way. We have had many instances, and this is not actually, it's more common in general education than it is in special education, but where you will have the student separated and you're just, okay, we're good, and one student will go around the adult and try to keep going and keep the fight going. At that point, you have to put hands on a student to try to remove them from a situation. In special education, especially in our special classes, we train our staff on how you can perform some of those holds and not hurt a child. And it is a training that we do every year. One of the main things, and then I'll just open it up if you have any other questions for me, is that the documentation and notification for parents, that has changed. So now the requirement is that there is immediate notification to parents and documentation when you have to use an emergency intervention. Before, it was as long as it was through the day, like within 24 hours. In fact, we had a document that just said, how did you do it within 24 hours? Now it's an immediate notification to parents. Now, there are some students who are on behavior plans that maybe access a special classroom, that may access a seclusionary timeout more frequently than someone else. The parents are very much a part of that decision, and they're aware of when a student would access that or not. Danielle, did you have a question?
Yes. So you said emergency, the ESI,
Uh-huh.
which is not always seclusionary timeout.
No, it is not.
So when you have to make an immediate notification, does that occur when, say they stay in the seclusionary timeout for 30 minutes, does that occur after they leave, or does that occur as soon as another adult can make that notification while the other adult stays at the seclusionary timeout?
Yes, as soon as possible.
Okay.
So preferably, like, I had this situation this week where there was a student who was accessing a seclusionary timeout room. He had been in there for a little bit. And I just happened to be in that school for something else and popped my head in there. And I said, remember, you have this time frame that you need to contact the parent. She's like, oh, I've already done it. I've already contacted them. They're aware of what we're doing. Most, especially in our special classrooms, most of those teachers are in constant communication with their parents on a daily basis, and some parents multiple times a day.
So is that contact verbal on the phone? Can it be a text, an email? What?
Yes, it can be any.
Any of those?
Uh-huh. And most often, whatever the parent prefers. However, they can receive that the best. Because some parents are working and a phone call won't work for them. So some of them prefer emails or whatever. It's usually parent preference.
So it doesn't have to be two-way communication, just as long as they've sent a text or an email, that
Correct.
counts.
Yes, that does, as long as they're notified.
And in most cases, the parents are already aware that it's an option.
Correct.
For special education. If through an IEP meeting or something like that, it's discussed in their behavior
Correct.
plan. Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah, it could be in a behavior plan, correct.
Okay.
Now, let me clarify that. We do not put seclusionary time out in a behavior plan. What we do is discuss the needs of the behavior and what we're going to do to help support the student to help improve those behaviors. But we, in the past, way back when, we used to be able to put that in as like an emergency measure, but we don't do that now. Now it is every single time if a student accesses a seclusionary timeout room, the parents are notified. And they have to fill out a form that comes to me. So I'm aware of when they're being used. Yes, the teacher. Yes.
Catherine?
You might want to use your microphone. Or you'll get in trouble from over there.
Well, I will. Okay.
I'm just doing an intervention.
No, you're absolutely right.
We're really good at
I
it.
needed that intervention, so. It's been a while since I was a principal, but, so, in the seclusionary timeout, they just don't shut the door. I mean, there's a window, isn't that correct,
Yes,
in the door,
in
so
every
the
one of
teacher can
ours.
always see what's going on, so the student
Absolutely.
isn't hurting themselves or anything like
Correct.
that. Okay.
Correct.
So they're totally aware of the situation, what's
Absolutely.
going on. That's
Yes.
Okay.
And they are constantly monitoring.
right.
It's not like you just stand there and you don't ever look in the window. There is constant monitoring. Yeah.
And I just was unclear, our seclusionary, this room, is it only in elementary schools?
No,
It can be up through 12th grade?
it can be up through 22 years old.
Oh, wow, okay. And then, are they in every school then? Do we have them in all of our
No.
schools? Okay.
No,
So,
well, I have spaces in every one of them. In most of our secondary, especially middle school and high school, they don't put hands on the kids. They're big. Those kids are big. And so if they become that aggressive, unless another student is actively in danger, we just don't. They are too large, and everyone will get hurt. There are spaces, but many of those spaces don't even have doors on them. So they have become more like the non-seclusionary, like what it is not. It's more like a calming room. a place where they can go. And kids access it. We had a student who was nonverbal and who could be very physically aggressive and was as big as me and could put me on the floor in nothing flat. And that individual, we had created this, it is a timeout room that is built in one of our elementaries. And that student, it just became that student's safe place. They would run in there, slam the door, and just be able to calm themselves down. But we weren't holding the door. They would just go in and out as needed when they felt like they needed to have that space. Sometimes we do instruction in there. Sometimes we have students who just get overstimulated with lots of things going on. And so a student, we can go in there and do some instruction where there's not a lot of chaos. Anything else?
So mine was just kind of a general question. This PBIS, is this something that we developed ourselves, or did we take a program from somewhere?
This is a, PBIS is not new to our district. It's everywhere. Yeah, it's all over the country. But each team at each school, they develop their own, like they use kind of the outline, but then they develop and make it their own for their own schools and what's appropriate for their schools.
And I assume that you collaborate with other districts, or do they do similar
Yes.
things that
It
we do?
actually isn't, Honey Joe, wasn't that, didn't the legislature come down? Aren't we required?
I
to
think
have-
that we presented last year the PBIS plans for each school.
Right.
Was it last year?
Yeah, Megan's over
Megan
that.
was-
We've done it for the last four years?
5 years.
And it's a,
And it's a requirement, right?
it's a Venn diagram, a chart that if this happens, you do this, if this happens,
Yeah.
you do that, if that. And so we'll try to bring some of those up and I can send them to you.
Yeah, every school has their own, and however it fits the needs of their school.
We actually review them and approve them as a board every year. I think October?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Catherine.
Question, on a monthly basis, how many times do you think that, across the district, we would be using the seclusionary rooms? Because you say you get a report every time they're used, right?
Every time, well, yes. I don't know, Karen. My mind is completely blank. I'm so sorry.
I guess, is it like maybe 5 times a month, or is it more 50 times? Like, are we talking?
And it kind of depends on what's happening. So there are some times that little friends, and I say little friends, that means everybody, but our friends are having a bad moment. Something has happened in their life and there's something really hard going on. And we may see a spike with that student and never see it again. That's actually kind of common. So even if I gave you numbers, it's not really representative of like it's the same students accessing it all the time. You know what, I don't know. I can't even pull a number out right now. I apologize. I would totally be wrong. But I can get that to you if you want it.
Catherine, if I could just ask, one of the things that has been concerning to me, and it seems like it's on the rise, is the number of injuries that some of our teachers end up with based on not putting their hands on kids, but certainly maybe even shielding them from running outside or from throwing things, shoving other students. We've had injured faculty, haven't we?
This year I've had a staff member who received a concussion. Last year I had one who received a concussion. We have, in the past, we've had a staff member who had to go to the ER. We have had broken arms from staff members. We have had torn ligaments, sprained hands, fingers. That doesn't include things like glasses that get broken.
Hair pulled.
Yeah, hair pulled. We have had this year, we've had an individual who had a whole chunk of hair pulled out. Some of those things are uncomfortable, but there are other things that can have lasting effects. And sorry, I want to give a shout out to our staff members, because I will tell you, they show up, and they keep showing up, and they go home with scratches and bruises and hair chunks pulled out and bite marks. We had a staff member a student ran across the room completely, no one saw it coming, and bit on the back here, enough that it broke skin. These are common occurrences that happen in our schools, and it is not because our staff are getting in their way or being unkind or things like that. They do amazing work every day, and they love these kids. And I just really want to recognize them for that, because it's hard. And you can see that it's hard because we have a revolving door in special education. It's hard work. And so those who stick it out, they're amazing people, and they really do need to have that recognition.
I have one question for you. How do you feel like as a board we could support them better? Or, I don't know, something to that effect.
I appreciate you being informed and learning about things. It's hard, and there are always multiple perspectives. And the problem is on our side, we can't always give all of the reasons and explain our side of things publicly, because it does breach confidentiality. And so the public often will not hear the side of the teacher or what happens in the classroom side. They often will only hear the side of other individuals. And so I do appreciate this opportunity to discuss seclusionary timeout, and I'm always happy to meet with you and if you ever have any other questions. Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll plan to do this a little more often. For all of you professionals that are here tonight for our discussion items, I know your day is long, so thank you for being here with us. We're going to move next to presenter Tony Ferdeber, our district security specialist.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate the time to talk here for a minute.
How is it to recognize you and make you work on the same night?
Okay, Keith, will you? Keith, will you go to slide number 2, please? For me? Okay, thanks. So bear with me as we go through this. What I'm going to give you guys is like the 50,000-foot view of this, because this bill, as you can see, is huge. 85 pages, 2,847 lines. It would take us days to drill through all this, so I'm just going to give you the overview of kind of where we're at so far and what we're at with it. So House Bill 84 passed in 2024, went to the legislative session, passed in May 1, 2024, went into effect. Some things that it put into place for us: it amends the International Fire Code. The reason it does that is obviously we're dealing with structures, so they had to add some amendments with that. Requires certain state buildings and schools to have emergency communication systems, our PA systems, things like that we've got in place. Requires school officer, resource officer training to be developed by the state security chief, Matt Pennington. Again, that's in place. The police department's already up to speed on that. Establishes duties of the state security chief, county security chief in relation to school safety initiatives. So we've got multiple levels. There's the state security chief's office, Matt Pennington, and then it funnels down to the county security chief, which is our local sheriff's department, and then from there it funnels down to us. So we're all working collaboratively to get this done. Establishes the school guardian program. We'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute. Requires threat reporting by state employees and others if they become aware of threats to the school. One thing they're really trying to do with this is get better communication between agencies. If one agency hears of a threat at our school, it automatically comes to us. So we're not waiting for it down the chain. One thing that they've done with this is they've integrated Safe UT with SIAC, which is our state information and analysis center. So if something comes into Safe UT that reaches a certain threshold, it will trigger SIAC, notify the local police department. For instance, this year we had an incident that the police department was aware of it at the same time we were. So it was kind of a multi-pronged response, and it worked completely as it should have. It was great. So they're really trying to bridge those gaps in lack of communication between agencies. Again, establishes some reporting for the Safe UT crisis line with the intelligence database, requires certain school safety data to be included in the annual school disciplinary report. Expands requirements for the school resource officer contracts and policies. Again, that's already been taken care of on the law enforcement side. We're good on that. Requires the local education agencies to ensure that each school within the LEA conducts a safety needs assessment. Those are the building assessments that we did earlier this year. They were required to be completed by the end of the year last year. Those were completed, done. And we'll talk about some changes that were made to this with House Bill 40. That was initially going to be required yearly. They've stepped back on that. Now it's every 3 years. So we don't have to do them every year anymore. It's now a 3-year requirement. So
Can I just interject something?
Yeah.
Tonight on our policies, we did have to make that change even though we'd had a first reading.
Correct.
So we've added that in, I believe it's highlighted in yellow tonight.
Yeah.
To make that change even though we didn't read it the first time because legislative session just got over.
Right, we just changed that this morning, in fact, yeah, so, yep, thank you. Then requires designation of certain school safety personnel. We're gonna go over that in just a second as well. Some positions that we have to have in place. And then clarifies that school may share certain information regarding an incident of bullying, cyberbullying, hazing, abusive conduct, or retaliation with a parent upon request. Megan's gonna touch on that just a little bit more. She's been doing a great job with that. Bringing that back up to speed. Requires a school to provide regular communication updates to a parent regarding the implementation of an action plan to address an incident of bullying, cyberbullying, hazing, abusive conduct, or retaliation. Again, we're up to speed on that. We've had several instances this year that have went really smooth, worked out well. Requires an LEA to update the LEA's bullying, cyberbullying. Sorry, go ahead.
Quick question.
Yeah.
On providing communication to parents, is that, again, via email, text? Or does it have to be a
Usually it's in a meeting. Usually we've got a face-to-face meeting that we'll hold in regards to those, yeah. Yep. Requires an LEA to update their bullying policy. We've got that updated. There was some certain verbiage that had to be added in for the cyberbullying aspect of things, so we had to add that in. That's already taken care of. We're up to speed on it. Requires the LEA to designate individuals for bullying incident response, outlines their individuals' duties. Again, Megan's been working with that, got a great job done on that. Requires panic alert devices, video cameras, access for schools and classrooms. This one kind of a two-part thing. The video camera access, Mike Draper has done a great job on. We're already well ahead of the curve on this. Way past where we need to be. Talking with a lot of other school districts, we're well ahead on that. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that here in a sec with some things we've done with that. Then the panic alert devices, we're in the process right now of looking at several of those, trying to decide which one we want to go with. That is the wearable, if you've heard about it. That's the device that the staffs will wear at the school to trigger that. And is what we're looking at, Robert and I have been working on this as well, is trying to get everything under one pane of glass. So we're looking at systems that have some cool features to where if it's triggered, it will automatically alert the dispatch center, it will activate cameras in the area, give our dispatch center real-time feed of what's going on so they can see and get that information to our first responders. So we're still in the process of working through that. Requires coordination of an emergency call information with the state's intelligence system. Again, that's that piece that I just talked about. It'll trigger that, notify our dispatch, which will notify SIAC. Amends processes for secure firearm storage under certain circumstances to include the school guardian. The school guardian piece gives a provision for like a gun safe, a small gun safe at the school to keep in their classroom or office, whatever it may be. In the event that they had to take that firearm off, it's a secure place that they can put it while they use the restroom or whatever it is they may have to do. And then lastly, make some technical changes to some of the other bills. Any questions on that? I know I went through that pretty quick before I move on, but that's an overview. Like I said, that's that 50,000 foot view of this bill. So what we've done, some positions I talked about, it requires the creation of certain positions from the districts to do. The safety and school safety and security director, that's the state designation for my position. They're calling it a director, we call it a specialist. And again, these are just a few brief points of what my position entails. Designate a school safety and security director for the point of contact for the county security chief, local law enforcement, and the state security chief. So again, I collaborate with all of those outside agencies on everything that we're doing because it's a multi-pronged approach to this bill. Participate in some of the required trainings, like anything that our guardians will go to. I'll be there with them to make sure things are up to speed and you know, things are getting covered the way they need to be covered. Coordinate safety responses, so any responses that we may have at any of our schools, you know, coordinate those and help with those. Collaborate and maintain effective communication with outside agencies. And then lastly, my position can cover like as a school guardian if need be. In the event of somebody being out sick or something, I could go to one of the schools and cover for that on a temporary basis. So, any questions on that? All right.
Is the school guardian, is that like a teacher or?
We're going to go over that
administrative?
next. Yeah, so the guardian. It's
so-
a school employee that's a volunteer for the position. They have to be a volunteer for it. To answer your question, the way it's written in the bill right now, they cannot be a teacher. They cannot be responsible in a nutshell for children. So if they've got a classroom that they're responsible or something, they can't do that. But they are allowing exemptions. For instance, we had one this year. The gentleman was a perfect fit. He was former military, had some good background experience. He taught a PE class at one of our schools and was a great fit, had great interest in doing it. So we actually filed for an exemption with the state to allow that position, him to do that. And to file for those is what we have to do is show the reason why we want this person in that position and then show what our workaround is going to be if there was an emergency, how we would make sure that those kids are safe. We were able to do that. The state actually approved it, and then unfortunately this individual resigned his position with us, so we no longer have him. But it worked good. It showed us, you know, how we can work through that, and it was a good learning experience for us. So this individual, again, technically can't be a teacher, but we're going to see what we have available and file for exemptions if we need to.
Tony?
Yeah.
Either a teacher or the principal. 'Cause
Right.
The principal's responsible
Right,
for certain
principal
group
cannot do it, yeah.
Okay.
And that one we're not gonna get an exemption for. I highly doubt that. The one built-in exemption for that is schools that are under 100 in population. So yep, our western schools, and it's kind of right on the border, but Sunrise kind of fits that as well, so.
So I have a quick question.
Yes.
The earlier slide said that you could fill in. Does that mean that the security person, the guardian, every school needs a guardian on campus at all times?
Yeah, bell to bell.
Bell to bell?
Bell to bell is the way it's written. Yeah, that's my goal, is to try to get, because if you think about it, if, say, you're in that position, if you're sick that day, we have to have somebody there bell to bell, so it would either have to be me or we'd have to find some other way to cover it. So, yeah, my goal is to try to get at least maybe 2 in each school to give us that redundancy. So, individual has to be approved by the school administrator, and then they have to complete a fit to carry assessment. This is basically a shortened psychological eval. The state has set forth the guidelines. We've already, there's a couple companies that are going to do it for different districts. We've kind of reached out to them to see what it'll take to do that. And then today we actually sent out some information to try to see who's interested in our guardian positions. So hopefully we get some good information back and go from there.
Tony?
Yeah.
The complete, your approved fit to carry assessment, how long is that?
Few hours is what they're telling me.
Few hours now, they've got
Yep.
it kind of thinned down to that.
Yeah, it'll be just a few hours, I think.
But it is going to cost us, I mean, this is a psych evaluation,
Yeah, this is,
basically.
it was like $375 per person.
Okay.
For the.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So what's the difference between a school safety, this S4, and a guardian?
So the guardian is the armed individual at the school that they're still doing their normal day-to-day duties. They would just act in their capacity if there was a threat at the school.
Okay.
An armed threat at the school. The S4, and we'll talk about them next, they're the individual that they're kind of handling, they're the ones that are going to be handling the threat or not the threat assessments, the need assessments at the school. They're the ones that do the drills, handle like the reunifications, things like that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
And you're wanting 2 of the S4s at each school?
No, 2 of the
Guardians. Okay, thank you.
Yep. The next thing they have to do, once these individuals, like I said, we sent out some information today to try to see who's interested in it. This summer, we will be starting the training program. The state has released the training curriculum that they have to go through. So we'll be starting that this summer with whoever's going to do that. That will be in conjunction with all our local law enforcement agencies headed up by the Sheriff's Department. It's going to be a 3-day training. The first day is classroom stuff. They've got multiple areas of topic that they're going to cover. The second day is range day. They'll be on the firearms range. And then the third day is a shortened day with some scenarios that they'll go through, some actual scenario incidents to kind of see their overall skill level.
Tony, if I could, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, beauty over, what's that? No. So how many of the S4s?
1 per school.
1 per school?
Yeah, there's 1 at the schools.
Oh, and this training thing, is that something that people can go and watch?
No.
Okay.
No, it won't be allowed. So there's actually this area pertaining to the school guardian, they've written into the law, it's actually a criminal offense to, like, if people talk about this position, like, say it's me that's in that position and I go and tell everybody about it, technically I'd be charged with a criminal offense. The training will be closed down because of that, things like that. This is really kind of a guarded piece, if you will, just for that reason. They don't want people knowing who they are, how they're trained, anything like that.
So if a
We
shooter,
will never, in a board meeting or in any public documents, identify who our guardians
Right.
are.
Right.
That is protected.
Right. The only people
To
that will
protect
know,
them from being a target
Yeah.
of,
Right.
if someone went into a school to cause harm, they would know who exactly is the armed person in the school.
Yeah. The only people who will even know that the guardians are the guardians, the school administrators, myself, and the district administration. Nobody else. So, yeah, it's a pretty guarded position. They have to hold a valid Utah concealed carry permit, complete annual and biannual trainings. Along with the initial training, there's 2 trainings per year that they'll have to go to maintain that position. And then again, like we talked, be present bell to bell at the school. So, any other questions on the guardian position?
Yeah, I have a question. I guess I'm confused. So these are already current employees that we have that are now
Yes.
volunteering for this position, but they cannot be teachers or a principal.
Correct.
So it's going to be like support staff and
Right.
those kind of things. Because we're not going to like, oh, new person hired in the building and you're the guard. Okay,
Right.
that
And-
helps. I was confused on that guardian. I thought we were hiring like people to come in and be guardians, and
No.
that makes more sense.
And then we've
Thanks.
even had people reach out. I've had people call me from the public saying, hey, I've heard about this program going on statewide. Can I volunteer to do it? Unfortunately, we can't use them. It has to be an employee. Like I said,
They could apply for any of our open positions.
Right, encourage them to do so.
Will you start sending them the list? Be like,
Right.
here is.
Yeah. And like I said, when we sent out the information, I asked even teachers, if you're interested in this, please let me know, because we'll try to get an exemption filed if we can to allow certain people. So, yeah, of course. So any questions on the guardian?
So does the state pay for that training?
What's that?
Does the state pay for the training?
No, it'll be up to us.
And do we know how much that will be?
Basically, is what we figured is just their hourly rate. The sheriff's departments don't charge for the training. There will be no cost other than the employee's time.
So,
So
have you got an
roughly-
approximate number?
roughly 40 guardians if you have 2 per school.
Right.
8 hours a day times, and we decided to go with a flat rate of $25 an hour. Now, I haven't done the math. Now, you have been able to put in for a grant. I don't know if that's covering that, or if that's cameras, if that's window film.
Right.
It's
So this year, I actually just got an email back. We were awarded the grant, and all they are covering this year is a few building upgrades, nothing else. So the only thing that we're going to have that we put in for, because we're good on cameras, we're good on locks, those were the kind of the key points that it covered, was the gun safes. So that was all.
So
that
the
was
panic
awarded.
buttons are on our ticket, on our bill?
Yes. Well, I say yes, but I don't think so. I think personally is what happened. They wanted this grant done quickly. And I'll talk about it in just a minute, but they wanted it done quickly so they could go to legislative session with it to say, hey, here's the needs. So they are going to fund a lot of these mandates, I think, is what I'm getting at. There's timelines built in. We don't have to have them right away. So I think next year they're going to start building upon what we've done this year. I think just looking at it from my mind, looking at what our grant numbers were, I'm sure it was astronomical statewide.
Sure.
And they said, ooh, we can't afford all this.
Right.
So.
Well, I think in House Bill 84 passed $80 million. A certain percentage of that went right to the state
Right.
leadership type situation, and then they
Yeah.
basically,
like
I
50
think,
million went back to the
Yeah.
state for
Of
the,
the
to the
80?
state security chief's
Yeah.
office.
seriously.
So the 500 per guardian, that comes from the state,
That stipend will come from the state, yes.
but that is to buy the safer the gun. Will that cover it, Tony?
They can actually use that, like if they wanted to purchase a different firearm or extra ammunition, kind of whatever they want with that. It's a one-time stipend. They only get it once unless the state next year decides, okay, we'll start to do it more often. But, yeah, for a quality
Just-
firearm,
That doesn't cover it.
right, it doesn't.
Just-
You're pretty limited.
Plus,
Sad that I know so much about how they cost for my husband, but
Yeah, yeah.
well,
it's-
that training, that 8 hours on the range,
Uh-huh.
we need to supply the ammunition for that, so that's going to be, just that alone is pretty expensive.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I haven't really had the chance to talk to other districts on this, but I feel that's a huge benefit for us, and I'm glad that we're actually doing that. Because that's one more thing that somebody would look at and say, that's, no, I'm not gonna do it, so, yeah. I skipped over the security specialist, I'll go back to that, I apologize. Kind of going back to your question, ma'am. With the security specialist, those are our S4s. There's one at every school. This individual cannot be the school principal, but reports directly to the school principal, works hand in hand with the principal on any of the issues at the school. Maintains effective communication with myself. I'm in contact with our people all the time. In fact, we had a conversation last night with one of them on an issue they had at one of their schools. So we're in regular communication. They're doing a great job with what they're doing. They oversee the school safety and security practices, again, any of the drills, any of the reunifications. They're the ones who are putting that all together. I'm just kind of in the background helping them with whatever they need on that. They'll be the ones conducting the school safety needs assessments. And again, it says yearly here. I put this together before we found out that there was a change on that. So that's going to be every 3 years now. And our plan with that is we're going to put it on a rotation. So we'll break the schools up into a third. So like next year we'll do a third of them, the year after. So it's not every 3 years we're doing them all again, just to kind of help ease the burden there. And then lastly, participate in the school multidisciplinary teams with the threat assessments. And the threat assessments is a CSTAG model. Are you guys familiar with the CSTAGs? No. So the CSTAG model, it's what the state has adopted as best practices for a threat assessment. And the idea there is if a threat reaches a certain level at a school, we've got a direct threat to a school of violence. Say Timmy comes to school and he says, I'm going to shoot the school up. He's having a bad day and he makes that threat. One of our individuals at the school that is certified to do the CSTAG will sit them down, and it's a very simple questionnaire. They'll go through it. And basically, it's a precursor to violence. They're trying to, the questions are designed to see if this individual is, if the threat was real, if it wasn't, what they're going to do. So these individuals participate on that multidisciplinary team to deal with that. So, okay?
can an S4 be an assistant principal
They
or
can.
a counselor?
They
Okay.
can, yep.
So on these, I think the next things are going to the building requirements, but for these school guardians and S4s and these personnel kind of things, is there, I saw later in the presentation, there's a timeline on the building stuff.
Right.
Do we have a timeline on the guardians? Is that
So
like has to happen now, or do we have some?
So technically, it's beginning of school year next year.
Okay.
This is one of those things, though, that's a soft timeline that they've put into place, and the state's going to kind of assess what happens from there.
Okay.
Because I think they're finding, I know they're finding very quickly that there's a lot of schools that have nobody volunteering for it. So they'll kind of readdress it at that. But the soft timeline is the beginning of school year next year. That's why we've got the information out now. We'll be doing the training this year for what we do have. So.
Tony?
Yeah.
Could I just mention, we have so many acronyms. I think, and you're going really fast, but that's really awesome. But I think this is worthy of taking a little bit longer. The CSTAG stands for Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines. And
Yes.
I think that's really critical in this whole thing, because the CSTAG should help evaluate and make sure that if there's a child, a student that poses somewhat of a threat, and he has some of the known triggers or things, that we then form a team, evaluate that person. I know Megan in the back has been part of that training. We've had that. We actually had the state offered one of those trainings in our training area this past summer. And so I think CSTAG, because so often when you've heard about these school shooters, they have a tendency to follow some of the same patterns.
Right.
And so that's kind of the things, and I think this is really critical,
Right.
to prevent it from ever happening.
Right. So if I can kind of just expand on that a little bit, go off the rails here for just a second, sorry. In another presentation we did earlier this year with some of our staff, take you back a little bit to Virginia Tech. We all remember the Virginia Tech incident, right? The individual that perpetrated the Virginia Tech incident, when they looked at they did the after-action report, and there was like 24 pages of that after-action report that were dedicated just to the systemic failures, leading clear back to his middle school days. In middle school, he wrote a paper that he submitted for a class, basically talking about his love for the Columbine incident, how he thought it was great, how he wanted to mimic it. Nothing was done. The paper was pushed to the side. There was a small, talk to the child, and that was it. We can't put a profile on these individuals. They've tried. The FBI has tried. Everybody has tried. There's no profile that they've been able to put on these individuals. But the thing we do have in common is they've dropped breadcrumbs along the way. Okay, that paper in middle school is a breadcrumb. So we do a CSTAG, we start the paperwork, we've got it, and then we can document, okay, the next one, this individual has a second incident. And again, this individual, there were 24 pages of documentations of incidents that he had that were just missed, completely missed. So the CSTAG model helps us track those. And as we look at these breadcrumbs, we can start to say, okay, this is Timmy's third time with doing something. What's going on here? We need to look at this pretty heavy. So that's kind of what the CSTAG model gives us in a nutshell. So does that kind of clarify it for you? All right, awesome. And I apologize. I am trying to move fast because I know you guys have a busy night. So, okay, so building requirements, the actual physical requirements to our building that 84 requires. These are the key points that the state has identified to help harden our buildings, if you will. Limited entry points and windows. We'll have managed point of entry, re-entry with proper visitor management at all our schools. Right now, we're pretty good. We're not too bad at our schools. We've got obviously some of the schools that have outbuildings and things like that we have to leave certain doors open, but we're working through that to help secure those. You look at some of our schools that have, the secure vestibules, things like that, that's what they're talking about there. We're doing really good with that. Visitor management, again, one of the systems that we're looking at when they come into the school, a parent comes in, they scan their ID, it does a quick background check to make sure they can even be in a school. If they're okayed, they get a visitor pass that's bright, but it also tracks them wherever they're at in the school. So if we have an incident, we know real time who's in our school and where they're at. Other points of access that allow ingress and egress will remain closed and locked. And then the window film. We've all heard about the window film, right? That's one of those big areas. We'll talk just a little bit about that because with House Bill 40 that came out this year, we're still waiting to hear what's going on, but we've got time on that. Video surveillance, exterior cameras. Again, Mike's done a great job on this. Shall install interior and exterior cameras for video surveillance on each entrance. Video recording shall be maintained for 14 days. We have to, by law, maintain those. We've already met that standard. We're fine on it. But the reason they want that is if there's an incident, we have to be able to share that upon request with law enforcement or whoever it may be.
So a question on our 34 portables? How do our portables fit into I can see securing the school, but when you've got 34 portables in the district, how do we deal with that?
So right now, a lot of our schools that have portables is what they're doing is they're securing them individually, and then like their hall passes is what we've done for the hall passes if they've been issued key cards. And there's like, I'm going to use Lakeview for an example. The door that's closest to the portables is on a key card, so if the child has to use a restroom, they can go use the key card to swipe into the building. Still keeps both buildings secure and gives them that access into the building if need be. Yeah, there's no key cards on any of the portables. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yep. Internal class door locks. Classroom and other instructional areas must be locked when occupied by students. Internal locks shall be installed on all classroom or instructional area doors, and magnets or other methods of to circumvent the door locks may not be used. This is one of those areas too, there's a lot of talk with the state security chief's office, but basically as of right now they've taken a hard stance on this. There will be absolutely nothing to circumvent those door locks, period. Magnets, anything like that. So we have to remove any of that stuff that's there. So, bleed and first aid kits, and this is one of those unfortunate areas. I know that last year was at 61 that gave us some money that a bunch of our schools had bought stuff. The problem was the implementation and the rollout of this wasn't the best on the state side, and because of that, they bought kits that weren't sufficient to what the state requires. Like it says, the kits have to have mandated items inside of it. There are certain items that are mandated. So those kits that are already there have some of the items, but we're going to have to add to them. So, and again, each classroom, large gathering area will be equipped with them. Fencing around the playgrounds. All our schools shall install fencing that's a minimum of 6 feet around the school playgrounds, other outdoor areas where school-sponsored activities may take place. Sufficient staff observing the playground substitutes for fencing. But again, we're pretty good on those areas, so, but if we need to, like staff is outside with them if we don't have that fencing there.
Does that include the middle school field?
So, I mean, we don't have playground, but we do have open space. And so we don't have it around that.
Another one of the
I'm more concerned that we have buildings that are, that we are, like, I would like to connect them, for example, Box Elder Middle from gym to auditorium. I know there's a right of way, but let's put up a temporary structure so that you don't have access to so many places. And with this idea of our architects and, the additions, our 2 high schools are the most open campuses, and through creative design, we think we can lock things down to one point, but it's going to need some time and figure that out. But I haven't seen, and maybe AJ, you could talk to. I haven't noticed that and Karina as well at Bear River Middle, but kind of the north field or the west or north fields, have that been an issue in terms of safety concerns?
I guess my question is, does this bill want us to fence those?
No, the ride around is right there. If they don't have the fencing, we just have to have staff with them outside if it's a sponsored event. So, like if, say a class goes outside to do launch model rockets or something, the teacher, whoever needs to be there with them while they're outside. That suffices for
So like during lunch hour, for example, our administrators are out and about walking around, just keeping eyes on things, but the other option would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you
and
for that question.
it's written right into there that that's sufficient. So, yep. And then school areas, outdoor areas, playgrounds may be restricted from public access during school hours as determined by the school. So during the school days, they can shut those off from public access if they want to. Okay. Any questions on any of those? Those are the kind of big areas that they're mandating for our school buildings themselves. The timelines on those, we've got till school year 29-30 for video surveillance, internal classroom door locks, bleed and first aid kits. School year 2034-35 for limited entry points and fencing. And this just changed with House Bill 40, which is the amendments to House Bill 84 that came out this year. It's actually sitting on the governor's desk right now waiting to be signed, but July 1, 2040 for window film. They're still deciding what all is going to be covered and what the requirements for the film has to be. So we're kind of waiting to see that. So those are our dates. Now with those in mind, I'm going to try to move us. Obviously we want to be in place before these hard dates are there. So get us there well before. And like I said, overall we're in pretty good shape, I feel. So the current progress that we've made as a district so far, our 2024 school safety needs assessments were completed and submitted. That was our first hard deadline that we had to meet to get those in. Every school did one. Got them submitted to the state so they can kind of see where the state's at, everywhere. All schools in our district have been measured for window film. Again, we wanted to get ahead of the ball on this. I didn't want to wait till the last minute and have the mad rush and be caught up in the middle of it. So we've had a local vendor come out, measure everything, so we're ready to go as soon as we get the requirements and whatever, we can start getting it installed. Again, cameras being updated, they're in the process of doing that. Mike's done a great job with that. And we've worked with our local dispatch center to get access to our cameras for the center. So if we had an emergency at a school or we had an issue, dispatch could actually log in and pull up the cameras at that school and see what's going on. So that's underway with them. We've received several demonstrations from companies on wearable devices. Again, we've narrowed it down to a few that we like. We're just kind of trying to decide which one we want to go with for sure. The 2025 school safety grant that I talked about was submitted. Again, like I said, they put that right before the session so they could, I think, take it to the session and say, here's what it's going to cost statewide for this to help fund a lot of these mandates. The school guardian training dates have been established with the county security chief. We've got those locked down on the books. And then again, we sent out interest forms to the school guardians to try to garner interest for those positions. So, any questions on any of that?
The wearable devices, is that just the panic button?
It is, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so then we jump ahead this year, House Bill 40, which is the amendments to House Bill 84. It was passed during the 25 session. Like I said, it's just awaiting signature. I actually just checked it a few minutes ago, and it's still awaiting signature. It's not quite as big, 53 pages with 1,789 lines. It makes some modifications to the communication device requirements for new construction to post-completion of determination. Basically, moving forward is what they're doing is the state fire marshal's office has been mandated to come into any new build and make sure that radio coverage for first responders is adequate. So that's what they're requiring there. We actually, as we went through a lot of our buildings, we would check the radios with dispatch, and we're in good shape. We've got some pretty good coverage. So revises the screening and training requirements for school safety personnel, adjusts some safety personnel provisions, and changes the safety assessment deadline, like I said, to every 3 years instead of every 1 year. Establishes the foundation for certain purposes. So what they're doing is they're putting together a foundation at the state level with USBE to go out and find vendors that would be willing to participate in the wearables and some of these items to help us. So it gives us more state contract options to look at when it comes to purchasing these items. Compliance supports, create some compliance supports, help out agencies and districts that need help with stuff. Modifies certain administrative structures for the school safety program, and again, make some technical changes. So just kind of an overview on that one. Not a whole lot of change on it, but there are a few things that we'll have to work on. And then some future goals that I have for us as a district I want to try to move forward with as we forge forward on this. Some two-way radio communication for every school within the district with a district-wide emergency channel that we could all switch to. One thing that I found over my career the last 26 years was in the event of an emergency, cell phones are the first thing to go. And unfortunately, we have a lot of schools statewide that rely on cell phones for their communications back and forth. They're great when it's smooth, everything is smooth, but when events happen, we have a mass, even if it's an earthquake or something, those communications, those cell towers go down. It'll be nice to have two-way radio communication. We've got a few schools already in place that have them. They're working great. I'd like to see us move forward with that. Some more disaster supplies at some of our schools in case we had to shelter in place for extended periods of time with the kiddos, that we could make sure they're comfortable at all times. NIMS emergency management training for all of our district and building administrators. This is the National Emergency Management System. It's a system that we use quite heavily in law enforcement and fire. And is what it does, it's just a quick incident command structure that we could set up in the event of an emergency. It assigns everybody that's in the building certain roles, so everything's taken care of. It stands up easy, it takes down easy, but it gives us smooth transition through that emergency. Continue trainings for staff on threat assessments, CSTAG, and our standard response protocols that we talked about. Continue to get people up to speed on that and get more people trained on CSTAG and make sure we're moving forward with the standard response protocols that we currently use. And then lastly, continued in-house training for our guardians and teachers. Just, there's the required training, but I want to go above and beyond with them on that. So those are some future goals that we have. Any more questions on any of that? I know I moved quick. I apologize.
I know at the PTA, they often will provide 72-hour kits for each classroom. Is that something that's the emergency disaster supplies that then the school district will then start taking care of?
we don't necessarily need to maintain them if they're supplying them and helping us with them. That's a great asset, and I love that they do that. I just want to make sure that our buildings are all ready. If we had to shelter in place for, you know, a couple days on end, do we have the supplies that we need to make sure, you know, say we get cut off for whatever reason, an earthquake happens, and we get cut off from the west schools or a school that we have to keep those kids in place, do we have the supplies needed to do it? Or what if, on the flip side of that coin, what if one of our buildings, the city comes to us in a disaster and says, hey, can we use one of your buildings to house people that are displaced for whatever reason? Can we help out in those needs? So, okay.
Tony, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This is great information for us to know, and thanks for the job you're doing.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
One of the questions they asked at the state meetings
Uh-huh.
was if every district had put together their cost of what this bill, the requirements, what it's going to cost the district to meet the requirements. Have we done that?
Yeah, that was, and yes and no when I say that. The needs assessment showed us where our deficiencies were. And then with the grant that we filled out this year, there were key areas that they were looking for to help, you know, fund those mandates. And those key areas were the areas that we identified, if you will.
So can you shoot us an email with what the costs are? The second part of that is that they ask us to contact our legislators to try and get more funding for
Right.
these kind of things. So it's nice to know what we need so
Yeah,
that we can
of course.
contact those.
Yeah, I will email you guys with that.
Thank you.
You bet. Anything else? Okay, thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
Tony.
I appreciate it.
All right, we're going to visit bullying policies and procedures. Megan Bushnell is our presenter.
I wrote these guys into it.
Thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for hanging in there with us.
So, we're gonna kind of tag team this, but I'm sure everybody knows us, but I'm Megan Bushnell, I'm Director of Student Services.
I'm Shaylin Akins, Principal at Golden Spike Elementary.
And AJ Gilmore, Principal at Box Elder Middle School.
Come to the mic. You got it.
AJ Gilmore, Principal, Box Elder Middle School.
I just want to start off with a quote, because I'm like, basically, never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed that's all whoever has. And as I was making this with these two amazing folks, we had met at principals meeting, and we had just kind of talked about everything that we are doing. And just kind of like Catherine said, I just want to give a shout out to all of our staff, faculty and staff, administrators, everything at the schools, because really they are keeping everybody so informed. They're doing everything they can to keep kids safe. They take things to heart, and they always want to do what's best for our kids. A couple things I wanted to talk about: the bullying policy, 5270. It was updated last year. The state is putting out a new model bullying policy, and I was a part of that committee. So I will probably be bringing a policy to you guys next month about that. But what I really liked is in the state legislature, they had some of the lawyers, one of our lawyers that's on kind of a retainer that works for Davis and Weber, and some other lawyers for the state came up and changed the definition of, they have a staff bullying, but I just put the student bullying in here. So it kind of goes along with what we teach our children in school, is that it has to have an intent to cause harm. Sometimes, you know, kids with their aggressiveness will just like maybe say something not very nice to another kid. Sometimes it's not repeated. I'm mad at Shaylin today, and I kick her leg just really lightly. But anyway, some things like that are not considered bullying. And another thing that we'll talk about a little bit later is just educating not only the students, but everybody, the community, families, our educators, and everybody in the school. But I don't want to read all of that, but if you wanted to, I actually really like this definition that the state is changing to. Next slide, please. The Safe Schools policy. Again, our administrators are really trained on this Safe Schools policy. I've had numerous principals who have reached out to me to say, when does this hit a level that it needs to come to the district, or when does this a level that we need to refer it to the courts. So if you guys get into this policy on that line where it says safe school violation sheet for admin, me along with some district leadership and some principals made this sheet to go along with what's in our state code of when we can refer those things. So we try to use that to kind of help direct us in those safe school meetings that we hold.
Yeah, so our elementary and secondary admin groups are really collaborative, and so we work together on this to determine what are some of our proactive and our reactive responses to bullying and student misbehavior. Catherine talked earlier about PBIS plans, and I think that's one of the biggest tools that we have in our tool belt is having a positive climate at our school. And so anything that we can do to create that positive climate is going to support increased academics, positive interactions and relationships, and reduce bullying. That's the plan anyway. So those PBIS plans that we have all created at our school, we have second steps lessons and other social emotional lessons focused on creating a positive climate within our school, as well as bullying specific lessons in the elementary level. Most of us do some kind of regular announcements on reviewing what the rules and expectations are in our school, as well as anytime there becomes an issue, addressing the specific issues that are happening in each of our schools. We all do some kind of student check-in for both parties, checking in with individual students. How are things going? Remember, this is your goal. How are things going if there's been a student that there's been a problem with? Is there anything you need to report? We all do something like that. That bullet of staff training on reporting protocols is really important, because especially with bullying, we're looking at repetitive behaviors, and so the better we can document those behaviors, the earlier we can determine if there is an issue. Educator's Handbook is a system that we use in our district to help document those behaviors. Assembly is focusing on positive behavior, positive school culture, school-wide rules, which are in our PBIS plans, an attentive adult presence, whether that's teachers greeting students at the classroom door, being present in the cafeteria, principals in the hallways, all of those kinds of things are really important. Hope squads and our school counselors and our LCSWs are an amazing asset to support this positive school culture and decrease incidences of bullying.
Sorry, can you just say one more time, what does PBIS stand for?
That's that positive behavior intervention plan that Catherine talked about.
That's not on your list.
I'll get it now.
Thanks.
Of acronyms?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep
She's
up.
really policing it. Like, I've added more words since she joined the board.
You'll see that secondary is very much the same. One of the best things, I think, I love the proactive, but I think we need to remember that most of our kids will never ever go down this road. 98% of our kids will never ever have to worry about the bullying policy. It's fun to talk to parents and say, hey, our schools are full of amazing kids. Do we deal with a lot of silly, stupid things? Yes, but anyway, so don't forget that. We build that positive culture. We have the second steps, the Hive, advisory lessons, all the announcements. You can read all that. The SALT, if you're down there, that's at Bear River High School. That's the student athlete leadership team. I believe it's done a world of difference at Bear River High School to support with this. One thing that's not listed up there that came to mind as I dealt with some things is empowering kids to tell and talk to the adults in the building. There's this idea that I can't narc, I can't snitch, I can't say stuff, but it's fantastic when you get a young lady that comes to your office and she has a picture of 4 feet in the same stall, and you get to do it 4 feet in one stall, like 4 feet. No, four pairs of feet. No, like you have to have fun with it. There was 4 feet in one stall, and we dealt with it, and it's okay. It wasn't bullying, but as we empower kids to talk to adults about issues that they don't appreciate,
they're helping fix the climate of our schools. So you can see all that stuff, and anyway. I don't know who's next. Oh, you are.
Occasionally, we have to be reactive when issues come to light. So these are just some of the things. You can read through that list. We try and be really communicative with our parents, things like accountability projects to help connect students with their behavior, and help them make better decisions, social skills, chat referral, that's our child assistance team in elementary. A lot of us meet weekly to review behavior of students and create specific plans for those individual students. Structured recess, so, you know, to help them develop better strategies in those unstructured times.
Shaylin, if I may, the chat might even be an early process prior to CSTAG.
Yeah.
Would that be, you know, that way you're talking and then you might end
Yeah.
up triggering that. Thank you.
Yeah, and if we're in that meeting, a lot of times we will look and see, are there individual students that we are developing a pattern, or are we seeing a pattern of behavior in a certain area or at a certain time? That way we can address those before it becomes a bigger issue. Loss of privileges, investigating, which we'll talk about in a minute, progressive discipline, you know, those are just the increased discipline that we try and do, regular reminders, and then those interventions to help teach appropriate interactions and appropriate behavior.
So what would be loss of privileges? What kind of privileges are you talking?
You know, in elementary school, it starts off with, you know, having a break with a counselor to review your behavior and set a plan for next time. Then the consequences would just increase. I always tell parents the goal is to provide a level of discipline that the student can connect with the behavior and have a desire to make it change. And always having a reteaching component to that and restoration as well, if necessary. If they're just sitting there in the room with their head down, that's not really teaching them anything, teaching them to make a better choice. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So at the secondary level, I mean, I got to shout out to our assistant principals, because a lot of this falls on them. The interviewing kids, the checking cameras, the gathering information. Just yesterday, we had an incident at the middle school. We are dealing with pubescent hormonal kids. We call them adolescents. And I mean, something happened at lunch, and we already had 5 parents in the office waiting to visit before school ended. So we take this stuff serious. It doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, we take it serious. Talking to parents is our best friend. The quicker we get the parents, the better it is to resolve issues. We have prevention intervention specialists. We have check and connect mentors, which is a new thing from the district, that they focus on connecting with kids, having that trusting adult. Our school counselors, our school counselors are trained to help change schedules, and we're asking them to be counselors. So our school counselors are amazing for what they do. Our LCSWs, we need 6 more of them in every building. I mean, it's crazy. When we talk about schedule changes, this is like, we don't want kids following each other to the same class. Like, I have math, and we don't want the next kid to come into math, or we don't want them to be in the same area of the building. Like, if we already know they have issues, we don't put them in the same place. So we'll do schedule changes to make sure that we keep them safe, or even draw out after 4th hour, you're going down this hall and you're going to go this hall. Try to keep you away from each other to prevent issues and prevent future issues. And then we do the regular reminders. It's reactive. You know, we might have had an issue, and we're going to get on the announcements the next day and remind everyone, hey, this is what we do, this is why we do it, and this is how we're going to do it. So,
Do you find that parents are very supportive, or what happens when you find a parent that doesn't want to participate in fixing the problem?
in my experience, and it's limited, you know, just my few years, it's usually because they haven't been heard. Once parents are heard and they get their frustrations out, they realize that we're not fighting each other, we're fighting the same fight. So we want all kids to succeed. So usually it's out of not being heard or feeling like their needs haven't been met. But once we get going and they realize what we want to do and how we're going to get there together, it's usually not a fight anymore.
Shaylin, do you agree? Is it different for elementary?
No, I think it's the same. Communication is key in everything. AJ talked a little bit about this, but when we have issues that are reported, we go through a series of steps. One of the first things we do is put supportive measures in place for both parties, and that could look like increased supervision. It could look like a temporary change in setting. It could look like a structured recess. Could look like someone monitoring closely on the playground, something like that. And then we're going to do an investigation. Either the administration in elementary, our counselors might support some of that. We're going to check cameras. We're going to collect statements from both sides, as well as anyone who might have witnessed the incident. And then we're going to communicate with parents. And we are going to let them know if the bullying is substantiated or not, regardless of whether it meets the level of bullying. We're going to communicate with parents and put some measures in place to ensure that we can support the behavior, whether it's bullying or not. And then typically we will talk about retaliation on the side of both students. And documentation is key with everything we do. We need to make sure that it is documented. That way we can continue to determine if additional supports are necessary for students.
I think it's me. All right, so some of the training and education we do. So all district employees at the beginning of the year, I don't know if the board has to do those, but the GCN trainings at the beginning of the year, that's one of the components that we have to do. We also have what's called the professional agreement, but that both our ESP and certified staff have to read through different policies that we have, and they sign their initials that they have done so. And one of those is the bullying policy. And next year I'd like to add like the safe school policy on there as well. Admin training, we're lucky that our leadership we have all principals meeting, and we have another meeting that's secondary and elementary. And everyone is great to have people speaking, training on these things, and I've been lucky enough to be able to kind of help train on those. Educator's Handbook is one that we've really improved over the last couple years, making sure that we document both the incident and the actions that we do. And for my records, I actually go to those, and there's ways that you can have them send you an email. So for me, anytime there's a bullying incident that any of the schools report, it gets sent to my email. I go in and put it into my spreadsheet. I put in who the victim is and who the perpetrator or the person who is the person that's going to have some actions. I put whether they have an IEP or a 504 or if they're ELL, things like that. So I'm collecting data to see if we have repeat offenders or if we have the same victim, even if the victim or the person, the complainant, if we want to call it that, the complainant has been targeted by multiple students. So that's something that I really appreciate that the administrators really put that information into Educator's Handbook so that I, as a district person, can kind of look and see those patterns and trends myself. And they're really good when I'm like, what's happening with this kid? I'm seeing his name a lot. I contact the principal and or the counselors, and they know immediately like who the kid is, what they've done so far. So just amazing leadership. And we talk about safe school violations, that 5005 policy, and kind of when things need to be heightened to another level. And like I said, admin is really good to call me and say, hey, do you think this needs to come to you? Or do you think, where should this land? And so I just feel, like I said, really privileged to work with these guys. School staff training, we talk about bullying and harassment at the school level as well. I know that they do these in some of their faculty meetings and things like that before school to kind of talk about that. Also to talk about really making sure that when we're supervising students, we're supervising students. And then, like I said, the behavior documentation protocols is that Educator's Handbook. And if it is deemed bullying, that we contact parents, and we have a form at the end of our bullying policy that we right now we're deciding where to house it, but that's a form that we fill out. When we've talked to parents, we fill it out and we keep it on file that we've done that.
When you say parents, in this case, it's both sides of
Both,
the bullying.
both sides get notified of that, yep.
And what does GNC stand for?
GCN.
Oh, yeah, GCN.
Global Compliance Network.
There it is. Nailed it.
That is not on the acronym.
That
It's
is
on my-
funny. It only comes around once a year. Oh, 7, 8, 9. No, so parent involvement. I got to talk about parent involvement. Really, like, if I could talk to every parent in the district, these are some of the things that I would emphasize. Is if you feel like there's issues, involve us early, alert us early. A lot of times, parents, it's to their popping point. That's when we find out there's an issue. The best way to make change is to give feedback, and we need that feedback early. It's like in sports. It's always the second person that gets caught. I get cheap shot, so I'm going to cheap shot back. It's amazing how many things get reported as bullying, but it's the second guy that's getting caught when the first incident never got reported. Does that make sense? So now it becomes a mutual issue and not just, I'm picking on you. Do we have bullying? Yes, but I don't think it's as prevalent as it feels because it's that second guy that always gets caught. We need to remind parents that we got to hear both sides. As passionate and as frustrated and as annoyed as parent 1 is, we still need to hear from parent 2 or kid 1 and kid 2. We got to get both sides of the story. We got to trust the process. A lot of frustration from parents comes from, what did you do to them? What happened to that kid? What's their punishment? I love my job. I want to keep my job. I can't tell you what I did with them, but just know that we're dealing with it. And again, we're not pulling out the biggest hammer. We're pulling out the hammer that's requisite to make change. A lot of conversations with kids, with parents, what's the point of a consequence? To change behavior. If I can say, Tiffany, stop doing that, that's your consequence because you changed your behavior. And then we just we ramp it up from there.
Hey, AJ?
Yes.
Can you clarify, you can't tell parents the consequence for the other child because of state and federal privacy laws?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Patience during the investigation, sometimes it takes us hours, days to get to the bottom of things. It always happens that the kid you need to talk to isn't at school that day. So that, you have to hit pause for that. You might not always agree with the decisions, but we're trying to take a holistic view of what's going on, and we're going to make the best decision with the information we have. And so please support decisions. Provide feedback. Without that feedback, we don't know what's working, what's not, what's annoying, what's okay. And last but not least, a lot of our issues, especially the cyberbullying, is happening outside of school, and they come to the sandbox of school, and it all comes to a head when we're all together in that sandbox. So figuring out how to limit social media for kids, for teens, for adults, it's funny, it would be really beneficial for the education process. So.
Also,
Yes, sorry.
if bullying occurs on social media, not at school, there's nothing we as school administrators you can do about that, correct?
Oh, we do.
Well, or like
we
what?
do a lot.
In the policy, if it comes and is kind of brought into school, then it is something that we have to deal with.
Correct.
Not that we want to, because sometimes it's very complicated, but if it's drug into school and now they're in class together, we have to address what we can address, and they're called supportive measures. It might not be illegal, sometimes it is illegal, depending on what it is, but we do have to listen to both sides, try to create supportive measures, make a plan to say, can we keep going, and then adjust the plan if it's not working.
Yeah, we'd rather not.
I just want to say I know what FERPA is, so.
Oh, good job. So obviously there's always things for us to improve. So, come on. When the model bullying policy goes to the state board, then I have a copy of it, but I'll wait until it's kind of official. My plan is to make right now it's in 5,000, which is students, but we have adult stuff in there, so I'm gonna try to flesh that out into adult and student, so put one in the 3,000s and one in the 5,000s. School climate surveys, we're doing that this year, so that's, and the SHARP survey is this year as well. So between those two, I'm hoping to be able to look at those things. It shows a lot of data. What I like about the SHARP survey, it's longitudinal. So like my kids in 10th grade, they took this in 6th grade and 8th grade and 10th. It's always the same kids because it's the odd year. So my kids will always be, so those cohorts of kids will get to see kind of what the schools look like. I know that sometimes there was like issues in the bathroom or they don't feel safe on the playground. So those things will be nice to kind of review on those school climate surveys. So some of you guys as parents probably got that, or employees, and so I just would ask that, you know, we try to get everybody to do that. And like AJ said, parent feedback, teacher feedback. We have teachers sometimes that will be like, what are you guys doing about this? You know, which is kind of the same idea as like FERPA, but if they're involved, they can be in the know. But if they're kind of, it's outside their purview, they don't need to know. We just know that we are taking care of it. Student feedback. We always try to follow up with the student, like we said, is my counselors are doing a really great job to say, hey, like if this happened, I want to see the supportive measures, but I also want to call you back in to see if anything else has happened. And then reviewing the data. Like I said, the educator's handbook data, really every administrator and counselor can kind of look at that data, kind of see where the spikes are, if there's a certain time of day or certain students or a certain class period, or whether it's in class or unstructured time, those kind of things. And the parent education plan that I'm working on is I'm going to try to have my elementary counselors do like a monthly bullying kind of lesson for parents and families to kind of review some of the things that we're trying to do, some of the things to help them be upstanders and really be able to know how to support. But if you guys ever have any questions about those things, you can always ask me, and we're just plugging along. And I really just want to, again, commend all of these people, because without them, like, it just wouldn't be possible. And I really know that we're all just, we love our little ones. So anyway.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I just have really appreciated your presentation and Catherine's and the safety You've given me some vocabulary and some verbiage to share with people. Like, these are kind of things that I've known in the back of my head, but to have it laid out in this way has been extremely valuable. So when concerns come, I actually have the words to explain it instead of my jumbled up thoughts. So I sure appreciate the time you've put in. I know this has been a long night, long day for all of you, but it's been very, very beneficial for me.
And thank you, Shaylin and AJ, for doing this with me.
Can I make a comment too?
Yeah.
Sorry. A couple of our school employees, administrator and a teacher, went to a conference recently, and they told me independently, we weren't talking together, how they were so impressed at this conference, how a presentation was given about a study about some school districts that were performing at really high levels. And the study found that these districts, they were teaching gratitude. And so I noticed, you know, as you talk about the proactive positive culture, do you or could we include that as we're teaching kids about, you know, be kind, teaching them about gratitude too?
And we have our second step is kind of our responsive services curriculum. We're actually adopting a new one, I think, pretty soon. So, but yes, those are all part of those lessons. And I know, like at the beginning of the school year, the expectation I had is with the littles, it's talking about kindness and those things, but gratitude's one of those traits that we usually try to. But I love adding that as well. So, microphone. Sorry.
I'll speak to Box Elder Middle School because that's where I'm at. We had our advisories Monday, 20 minutes, focused on whatever we want to focus on. We did appreciation, we did gratitude, and we did kindness back to back to back because it is very, very important.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to add one short comment. So, hear a lot of times or see on social media that complaints about our administrators that they're not responsive, that they don't do anything about bullying. So I really appreciate this presentation. I just want to add my comment that I've seen administrators respond. I was at a school and I was there early for my appointment, so I was sitting in the hall. I don't know what happened. I was not eavesdropping on what happened, but I know the teacher was interviewing a student, what happened at lunch. And within a few minutes, an administrator showed up, and she's explaining to the administrator, this is what happened, and the administrator is taking that child, and then they're interviewing some other children. So I know that our administrators respond, and please don't listen to the haters. We appreciate everything that you do, and we know you work really hard for all of these students, and you care about them a lot.
I agree.
Well,
Thank you.
can I just feel like the need to say something. To be the superintendent and to get to work with all these people and to know how much knowledge and how much impact they have, everybody that I look at as I'm sitting out there looking, and the people I get to work with on a day-to-day basis, and to know that they are working so hard to help our kids be successful. And it just really is meaningful. And I look at, tonight has been long, but man, it's been a great night to hear the things that we're doing to help kids be successful. So really, again, thank you guys a ton.
Thank you. With that, we're going to move on to our legislative update from Superintendent Carlson.
And with that, we go to this, okay?
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Keith, if you wouldn't mind, would you hit the board brief first? Yeah, I don't have them. I'd like to hit the brief one. If you can look at that on your own screens, it's so hard to see the small, but this is from the USBA, and it just gives a real quick brief overview of some of the things that are unique this year. As you can see, there's an additional increase of 4% on the WPU. It could be a little deceptive because some of the things, the WPU is always considered above the line, and what they did do is mess around a little bit below the line, and it might mean that we have to take some of our money that's in that WPU to help us pay for the things that are below the line, and so that's somewhat deceptive. On the educator salary adjustment, we've had 2 other years in the previous 10? When did the first one come on? It's been 3. This is the 3rd one, right? 4th one. Oh, that's right. So at this point, for teachers, there's 9,000? 80. Okay. I don't pay attention to the real close numbers, but 9,000 that teachers get as what's called this educator salary adjustment. So what they did is that's an ongoing amount, and then there's a $1,000 one-time bonus for education support staff. And so you can see that's going to come, and they're just trying to say thank you, and they're doing all they can to help us. That $50 million, it took $50 million to take care of that 1,446, and then the 1,000 direct salary increase is going to be one time. That $50 million for the 1,000 bonus for educator support staff. Sorry, it's pretty amazing. It takes $178 million for that 4% WPU increase. The educator professional time, they get paid for up to 32 hours? 32, but we only get X amount, so sometimes we have to say, okay, and we've gone anywhere from 20 to 32 depending on how much money that we receive. This is teachers that pretty much put in extra time with preparation, with maybe extra classes. There's just a variety of things, and we really just say yes, and they get paid for it. There's $65 million to make Mr. Wiley at the back smile. It's Career and Technical Education Catalyst Grant Program. I'm hopeful, or I'm seeming, am I wrong in thinking that we're hoping to get a piece of this for our CAPS program?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're working very closely with that past with Cash and Logan.
Okay.
We're going to be applying for as much of that as we can.
Okay, with a smile on our face, as Ben Wiley usually has.
Combining with them is that we get a bigger piece.
Yes. Well, they have consortium. You get more points if you're in a consortium than if you're single district. So that's very good. And Ben, I know, has taken some of you guys to some of the programs around the state, and so it's a great program, and it really should help kids tremendously. There is $14 million for teacher supplies and materials. I don't know how much that's ending up peeling down to individual teachers, but That's usually something that we've gotten every year. There's a new one here. It's called Stipends for Future Educators Grants and Student Teachers. I know Karina is working on that one. That's the future grants. There's another, I believe that's it, and I hate to say an acronym unless she knows what it is. There's URAPT. This is just a new one, so we haven't got that one ingrained in our heads yet. Then we have a grow your own pipeline, and that's if you have paraprofessionals that have a certain amount of education that you can help them go get some more education and help pay for things like that. There's a lot of stipulations with that. And then support staff professional liability insurance for Utah educators, and I haven't followed that one, so you can go ahead and read the rest of that one. Keith, if you wouldn't mind now going to the tracking sheet.
Sorry, one question. Are
Sure.
those things we have to apply for, or we just get them, a part of them as it comes?
The 65 million, that's going to be an application. I think the rest of them will come to us. Is there anyone on there that anybody sees differently? Yeah. Yeah. 1.89, something like that. That's how much of the student population in Utah, we're about 1.89% of that population. So whenever you see numbers, you just times that by 1.89 and you figure that's how much we get. Now, on the 65 million, I do think that will be competitive. So that's one you go out and you really make a nice presentation, and I'm hopeful that we do really well on this.
Superintendent, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So this WPU increase, because I've been trying to follow the legislative session, there's so much I don't understand, but weren't they, like, it seems like they passed that they have to fund growth. So is that in addition to the growth, or is that number, are they including growth in that? I guess I'm just trying to understand, because I hear education was great this year, and then I hear not really, like as far as like what they've spent for.
Well,
so
years ago they would fund growth out of that, but I want to say 5 years ago they started just funding growth. Now in the current climate, there actually was a decrease in population, and so no longer do they fund growth out of the WPU. And there is a certain percent, I think 3% this year. Neil might know this better than I, but it comes from the Consumer Price Index, and we're guaranteed that through the amendment that passed
It's actually 4% this year, so they gave us the minimum on the WPU, funded some other programs to make up, I won't say make up, but for priorities to make it look better. They funded us better than they actually did.
Okay.
Because we were slated to get 5% of WPU, but the two top lines of 50 million apiece for educator support staff and for licensed teachers, that ate up that 1%.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Okay, Keith, if you wouldn't mind going to the tracking sheet. This is a joint legislative committee. Neil, Tiffany and I made it, I think, to almost all the meetings except I missed the last one, and I think each of us missed one or so in the middle of there. And there was a lot of, discussion. And as you can see, the very first one up there is HB 40. That's the bill that Tony talked about. We've had a lot of discussions over this last year or two with superintendents, with the State Board of Education. Representative Wilcox has actually come to the superintendent's meeting and talked to us, and we've all pled that you're putting a lot of mandates upon us that really aren't funded. And we all know the term unfunded mandate, so we are still trying to get more and more. However, there's only so much in the pot. When they put money from there, then of course it comes away from salaries for employees, and so it's always kind of a catch-22. But if we're going to be mandated it, then the money has to come from somewhere, so it would come out of the WPU anyway. As we go down through there, any one of those that jump out at you that have any was that 110, Neil, that they talked about the minimum basic tax rate reduction? You've followed that one, haven't you?
Yes, I did, and I trying to draw them out of my memory because there's so many alterations to that. But I think what they did was they unlinked it from a specific amount, and it's set by the legislator, the Joint Legislative Committee. State Tax Commission, USBE, will set the minimum school program threshold together rather than just being with one of the entities.
Thank you. Trying to just look as we go through. I know we'll need to talk about 267, but I'm trying to see if there's anything there that really jumps out prior to that.
Superintendent, in that
Yes.
discussion with the legislator about unfunded mandates, how does that communication go? Do they give a response when you have that discussion? Do they stay silent? Do they say, I'm sorry? What do they say?
Well, I will say this. I felt like this year I had more communication than ever with Senator Sandel and Representative Peterson. I would include Representative Gwynn, but still that hasn't been very beneficial to talk to him. And I think his line actually comes up almost to the Quick Quack car wash. So everybody south of that is, at least that's what Tom Peterson told us. Roughly his line is the Quick Quack and north, and then Gwynn, and so
It's only for the west side of
okay.
Maine, but on the east side it goes all the way up to. Yeah,
Okay,
it
so
goes
it kind
quite
of
a
bends
bit.
around up there?
It goes quite a bit
Okay.
north there.
Tom Peterson was on Brian's ballot.
On yours, okay. So he does represent, and I don't know, we probably need to find a way to reach out. I haven't been successful, but we invite him to everything. I send him texts. Anyway, maybe he'll hear this and feel like he does need to reach out to us. But I will say Tom Peterson and Senator Sandel reach out a lot. Plus, they're receptive when we send him messages to him. And I say we, Keith worked with school fees a lot. He had that one down. I will say that right towards the end of the session, there was a bill that Ben was involved in and I apologize, I don't remember the number, but it had to do with cosmetology school. And the bill, we think, was being pushed by vendors or schools that taught this, and they wanted to disallow high school age students from taking cosmetology while in school, like through BTEC in our situation. And they had the excuse, some of it was that one of the things that they were teaching was laser tattoo removal, and they thought that might be too dangerous. And so I think working with Senator Sandel, actually, interestingly enough, it was his bill. And he got it pushed through, and they had an amendment and took care of things, and it worked out so that we still have students that are able to take cosmetology during school time. And that's just an example. I think I probably communicated with Senator Sandel 2 or 3 times after, of course, I talked to Ben. I have a granddaughter that graduated from Corner Canyon. She didn't decide to do it until she was a senior, so right now she's in a school, and she told me, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's fairly steep once you're outside of the high school to pay for the tuition to get into there. So there's one example. Tom, you may or may not know, had some tough issues during the session. He had a back surgery on I believe a bulging disc. I don't think he'd mind. I think he knew that. He also had a brother-in-law that tragically passed away in that airplane wreck in Alaska. So he still stayed on top of things, and I commend him publicly for that. There's 267. I've got that down there. 267, House Bill 267, was the bill that basically shut down collective bargaining. It shut down the ability of the association to be able to represent the members of their association, the UEA basically, and then it comes down into our district, the BEEA and BESPA. Is BESPA on your list, Stephanie? Is that on there? BESPA? Oh, okay. Well, Keith and Karina help me with this one. Box Elder Support Professionals Association. That's that. B passed. Anyway, that's the association of our support staff, and so they work. And we also have the BAA, which is our administrative association. So basically, there's some situations where if something is put into place by May 7th, it is put in place for the rest of the year. And we worked with Representative Peterson and Senator Sandel, and we told them that we do very well with our associations, and we don't feel pressure, you know, to do anything that we don't feel is in the good interest of all of our employees. And so both Representative Peterson and Senator Sandel voted against that particular bill, and I appreciated them for that. And I think it shows the people in our county the support they have from their legislative staff. Any others that you've heard about?
I was
Tiffany?
wondering how Senate bill was it 37? How did that end up affecting us? Isn't that the one you mentioned earlier, Neil?
37 affects us in a way that it delays our property tax collections. So normally we get the bulk of our property taxes once the county receives it in November. So in November, first 2 weeks of December, we receive 75% of our annual collections. This year is about $42 million. This bill modifies that. Instead of the county dispersing to us directly through a direct deposit, it will go to the state treasurer's office in their general fund, outside of income tax and outside of property is protected. It's in their general fund. And then it gets, within 35 days receipt of that, USBE will then transmit that to us with a monthly allotment memo. It occurs at the end of the month. So if you think about the how that works, so if we receive a payment in November, 35 days is going to put us into January. In January, our allotment comes at the end of the month. So we really have a 60-day delay on any property tax collections. That's 60 days of interest that we're not receiving. For contextual purposes, we would collect about $40 million a year in property taxes. 75% that happens in November. So we're not getting close to $30 million for 60 days and missing interest on that $30 million immediately. So that's how it affects us.
It's significant.
The majority of that money pays teacher salaries, correct?
It's about 1/3 of our operation budget.
So it's the reason we have it in some of it sitting in accounts and earning interest is because teachers are paid monthly.
Correct. Okay. And to illustrate that point further, we will receive a one-time allotment, or not a long time, but we till November, but we have bills starting in July, August, September, October that we have to pay that we don't have access to those funds until November. So it really is, it creates a timing issue for us from a cash flow.
What was the state's reason for this? Did they give one? What did they say was the benefit that?
There's no benefit to schools for this.
Yeah,
Well,
I listened to
what was their reason for the benefit for the state?
I listened to the hearing on this, the whatever education committee hearing on this, because I was curious what they were saying. And the bill sponsor, he said, it's not going, well, these were his words, it's not going to affect, we know it does, but he said it's not going to affect the schools at all. And one of the committee members said, well, this is state funds, so it should be state run, like it shouldn't just come to districts. That was the only reason I heard that was. But I think it's just a way for them to access income tax without property tax, and then so what they're doing is they're taking our property tax, putting it in the general fund, and then they're taking out of income tax to reimburse us that stuff. So it's a way for them to access things in the general fund. They didn't say it like that was what the conversation was, but they're like, this doesn't do anything, and that was the one thing that I did hear that they could justify it with, saying this is state. I can't remember what the wording was, but so that it should be administered by the state.
So they feel that the property tax is governed by state law, so anything that has a state law attached to it, they feel it's their prerogative to manage and distribute or do however they want to do with that particular funding source. And so this is their way of taking control of that, because they didn't have control before. Other conversations I've had with other legislative staff and professionals at USBE is that the treasurer's office didn't know, or the legislature didn't know how much, what's the flow, how soon does it come, and this gave them inside information of how much property tax is being flowing each month and interest payments and all these. Reality is, I think they would like to have their hands on this money to give them more budgetary flexibility when budgeting from the general budget for other agencies that don't access income tax funds, which are public education, K-12, higher ed, and a little bit of social services. Everybody else is compensated via sales tax and other fees that they collect for various purposes.
So, has the governor signed this yet, or is it, I didn't
Not
get to look
yet.
that up yet. I mean, chances he vetoes it are small, but that is still an opportunity if anyone wants to call his
USB
office.
has taken the position of oppose and asked the governor formally to veto this bill.
So, my other thought on this is, did they take are they going to take away property tax for the county and distribute that back to them, or they only took it for education?
Only for education. Because in education, we have a mandated component to receive funding on the minimum school program. We're required to collect a certain amount of property tax. And so the other counties other entities don't have that requirement. And so that's how they kind of stuck their nose under there. But eventually it could come down to the state wants to get all the city collections, county collections, special districts like mosquito abatement collections, all those collections they may want to get their hands on at one point in time.
And they've said they're going to give us back everything we collected, but was that written in the bill that
Yes.
is a requirement they have to?
Yes.
But not the interest?
Not the interest.
Okay.
I will say that I've heard this said, and I do believe it to be true. It's the proverbial camel's nose under the tent. And once they get control of it slowly, I hate to say there's nefarious ideas, but I'm very worried about it. And this is also what is on your tax notice information as the basic school levy. And we have a hard time talking to people because it's the basic school levy and they think it's us that control that, and we don't. You know, we don't control the amount, and now we don't even control that money for 2 months that it was actually the taxpayers of Box Elder County. Have I missed anything there, Neil?
100% correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it seemed like this was passed by a pretty high majority.
Yep.
Not necessarily. I think it was like a 20-16 vote in the Senate. So it wasn't veto proof.
All right, that's...
Superintendent, can I
yeah,
just...
absolutely.
Because these will be future board agenda items. House Bill 344 on the school fees is at the governor's desk. And right now, the way it's currently written, beginning this coming year in grades 6 through 12, we cannot charge for math, science, language arts, social studies, or health. We can charge for art, world language, PE, and CTE courses. There's still going to be a chunk of money that we're going to lose. Also want to add that we now have to itemize each class. Where we've been for the last, since Darrell Eddington was the principal at Box Elder High back in 2001, we have been saying, here is your general fee, take 18 classes, whatever classes you want to take. Now we'll have to itemize each class. So if I want to take pottery, that's a $40 charge. I do worry because, or I want to take wood shop, that might be $25 charge. Whereas right now they may charge $91 at the high school or $80 at the middle school or $60 at the intermediate school, and they could take all classes. Now we have to itemize.
Does that start this fall?
That
Sorry.
starts this fall,
Oh.
Julie. We also have to have 2 board meetings and we have to get this done by July. I've already started to tweak this. I've been spending a lot of time on it, and my hope is that by May we'll have reading number 1, and by June reading number 2, so that we meet the deadline of July. So we are going to have a financial pinch there a little bit, but I want you to know that it could have been a lot worse, because the way it was written going in was no fees. So it still allows for some of our more expensive more hands-on type activities that consume lots of stuff, we still can charge for that. But it will be a shock to our community a little bit because they're used to a general fee, which for the most part they haven't complained about. And now it's going to be per class, which is going to provide every time a kid changes class, either we got to reimburse or we have to gather. I honestly oppose this 100% because I think it becomes the haves and the have-nots, and I hate that. However, we will get through this, and I will bring it to the board. And if you have any questions about it, I'll try to get it out early enough so that we can tweak it before we do that. But I wanted to let you know about that. And the last one on House Bill right next to it, 381. This is an elimination of the civics exam that begins in 8th grade and a new class to be offered at the senior year. It doesn't have to be the senior year, but it would be in conjunction with government. So it'd be a full year-long course, government for a trimester or a half a credit, and then a half a credit of civics education. So that is going to affect Mrs. Fife over here, and when we start saying how are we going to, because we need another social science credit. So that's going to affect teaching. And by the way, when someone takes that course, that means they're not going to take another course. And whatever that other course is, could be CTE, arts, there's a lot of things out there. It could be athletic hours. There's a lot of things that we're going to have to, but anyway, that's going to affect policy 4060 and 4065. And we'll get this all worked out and brought to you as well once we get this finalized. But those two, yes. Well, I don't think
so.
excuse me, this civics, it's not ready for fall. I think we have a year to get it in. But anyway, those are really impactful, and we will be up to speed. We'll try to communicate well, but they are issues we have to be aware of. Not issues. Challenges? No. What was the word? Opportunities to figure out things. We're excited.
So if a parent comes and is really frustrated with this new thing, we can just completely point to the state?
It is the state law.
So it wasn't even us, it was them.
Yeah. Right. I would oppose it myself, but we're going to have to follow law, or when we get audited, we'll have a finding that you did not follow state policy.
It's actually worse than that. There's a court order that supports the school fees and how we have to make it work.
I don't like the sound of that.
It's a consent order from the 80s about how the LEAs were collecting fees in contrary to state law. So rather than changing the law, they agreed to a settlement agreement that they wouldn't do that anymore. And that court order is still in effect.
One more quick one that I did mention to the board in updates was House Bill 396, and that's the small school district scale of operations. And a year ago, they ran this bill, and they were going to cut us almost in half, if not a little bit more. And so through Senator Sandel and Tom Peterson both working, I've been on a committee, it's called the Necessarily Existent Small Schools, or NES, during it was after the legislative session, and I can't tell you how many meetings I've attended, both physically and online. But we did get it to the point where we were held harmless. And us and Washington County were two of the bigger ones because we're bigger districts than most districts who have necessarily existent small schools. So in short, we are going to be held harmless. So we feel pretty fortunate to have that money, close to $1 million. It depends on if we have secondary students and elementary students in each of our two most western schools. If we have both of those, then we do get money based on having both secondary and elementary schools additionally. So that was good news that happened. And I will say once again that Senator Sandel and Representative Peterson were a big help in helping to push that through.
Just curious, with Trump pushing on education system, something, does that affect anything that happened here?
Well, I was told, I think just a day or two ago, he cut the education department in half. And I don't know if that means there's half the employees that are going to be working. We do get 7% of our funding from the feds. So 7% of 170 million is a pretty good chunk. Is that
So our budget this year for federal funds is about $5.5 million.
okay?
Most of the cuts made to the education department were administrative in nature, not programmatic. And fun fact, the education department did not exist before 1979. Before that, it was administered through the department. The funding flowed through OMB, Office of Management and Budget, because it's established by law. And so they fund a certain dollar amount, kind of do the state here, and then it's distributed to the states by population counts. So our special ed dollars and our Title I dollars and our CT dollars, Perkins dollars will still flow. It might just flow through a different agency before it gets here.
Very good.
It would take an act of Congress to actually dissolve the fund.
Well, the funding is
that
an
we
act,
receive.
is a
Because
statute.
it's in law.
It's in law.
President Trump can't just, right, on his own?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm still hung up on the accountant background there that called that a fun fact. Anyway, thank you.
JLC is an interesting process, and I would encourage any of you to jump in a car and ride along and just see how that works. There are so many of those bills that say monitoring, if you read them, that when it says the JLC was monitoring that bill because changes were being made, and they're trying really hard to keep relationships with certain legislators. And there were so many times I just wanted to oppose. And then you're kind of told to just hang on a second, these are the reasons we're trying to work with this person to get it changed for the best that we can. So that's all those monitorings were a lot of, we want to place at the table. We want to be able to be in the conversation, so let's wait and watch and see how that goes. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, the cosmetology that we talked about, I think it was amendment number 3 that got it to the point where high school, so when we're monitoring it, we're working like crazy. And when I say we, it's usually Lexi Cunningham and the leadership from USBA and the leadership from USBA's, of course, the school boards and the leadership from the superintendents are talking and giving the points of the JLC, the Joint Legislative Committee, and saying, hey, we really need you to change that. And it's a lot of times individual superintendents and board members who have relationships with those people that really help sway the way those members of our House and Senate vote.
Tiffany, can I make a comment on this? Some things, that happen in the world that bother you, you can let slide, but I can't seem to get past the record number of bills that were passed. And I've said before, when I first got on the board, went to our yearly conference, they were complaining about this. And you might think this is a stupid idea or won't make a difference, but I've been thinking, is there a way we could present data to our legislators? And even it would be great if every district in the state could establish data that says this is how much time we're spending, this is what it's costing you as taxpayers to implement all of these bills across the state. And it's costing this amount of money, and is it really worth, 100, how many bills it was? How hard would that be to do, to establish that kind of data? Or
I can't speak to how hard it would be. That would be Superintendent and Neil, but I think it's a great idea. I think tomorrow's dinner is a good time to present that to our state, or the State Board of Education, those leaders, the association leaders, and maybe that's a conversation we have every single year when our representatives come to dinner with us in December. But
I think it's important to note that for the last 3 or 4 years, we have talked about that at length and talked to our legislators. They'll turn right around and tell you that a lot of times legislators run to get certain things passed, and they're going to run their bills, and there's nothing that controls that, and it's just kind of a free-for-all, and it's funny how it all works. Our state hates it when the Fed tells them what to do. And then they turn around and tell us what to do, and then it's a trickle down that just absolutely drives you crazy.
Well,
so,
I'm just wondering if
but
there's
you're right.
Federal
if
government
we can
if they
create
took the
some
income
data
tax away.
that we can talk to legislators and even make it public somehow, get it out there for people to know this is what they're costing us and what's the return on this investment.
Yeah, it is. I think tomorrow night, we need to bring that up and have a good discussion about it, just for everybody's knowledge. We get to meet again tomorrow night and spend 2 or 3 hours talking about legislation with the USBA regional meetings, and there'll be people from, I think, Ogden, Morgan. Is that about
Ogden
who
and
comes? Weber?
Actually, for the dinner, they've combined us with Cash and Logan.
Oh, they went the other way, Cash and Logan. So
I'm not going to be at tomorrow,
Okay.
but I'm going
We will
to the.
speak up.
I'm going because I can't tomorrow, but I'm going to so I can talk about it at the Ogden one.
Okay,
Good.
very good.
If you want to bring it
Yep.
up tomorrow.
We will.
Just curious, the monitoring, does those change then?
Those change through the session, but now that the session's done, it won't change. But throughout the session, if you watch the tracker, those will change week to week as the JLC meets. They bring up a point that was talked about, so it may change from opposed to, well, now this bill's been modified or amended and changed to monitoring, or it'll change back and forth, right?
Oh,
Throughout the
Yes,
session.
absolutely. And then a lot of times we just monitor them to see if they get amended to something we don't like or something we really love, then we might either oppose them or support them then. So if they're just being monitored, they're probably kind of a neutral bill in the effect that it has upon our districts.
All right, let's move on to our monthly financial report from Mr. Stevens.
I will be quick with this one. There's nothing exciting happening here. I would draw your attention to the top, and I know Keith can zoom in on that, the very first page. The top line, it's 67% of the fiscal year has been completed so far. And this top section is about our budgets. If you see our budget completion, we're well ahead of collection on revenues relative to the percent of the year that's completed. So we're in a good spot. And if you would glance to the next few pages, I'm not going to draw my attention to any specific one. You'll see our expenditures are right about 55 to 57% completed relative to our budget. That means that we are well ahead on our revenue collection versus expenses. I haven't completed the full year forecast yet, but we'll probably turn over a couple $1 million this year in our budget in savings. Last year we turned over $5 million. So we're in a good spot. I don't have any concerns about revenue collections, about expenditures. I am slightly concerned about the cost of the school safety program going forward. And I'll work with Tony and Corey to establish a budget for the expenditures so we can kind of plan some long-term budgeting amounts to spend each year, so we're not trying to do it all at once or all at the end. But that's my budget report. There's nothing to be concerned about. We gotta have enough money for now to do what we need to this year. Going forward, we'll have conversation about truth and taxation and how much to raise and what our needs are. But for now, we're okay.
So, Neil, is that 5 million, not 5 million we put in savings, 5 million less that we've expended on our expenditures from last year?
So it effectively goes in the savings account.
It does, but
So it
it's,
rolls over to what we call a fund balance, and there are several different funds. We have Fund 10, which is operations. Bulk of our money goes there, $136 million budget this year. Out of 177 is for operations. And so last year we rolled over $5 million into operations. And it sits in there. It was what we call, our savings account is an unassigned balance. But generally, if you leave it in a particular area, you can keep on rolling that balance bigger and bigger each year. And that's what we've been doing.
You know, is there only so much that we can carry over like that, put in our savings account, or is that?
Yes, 5% of our operational budget can go into what we call an unassigned fund, meaning we don't assign to any particular area, we just have it in the savings account. And so this past year, we didn't do any of that, we all assigned it to different funds. So like Fund 10's operations, Fund 21 is student activities, Fund 31 is debt obligations for our GO bond, or Fund 32 is capital expenditures. And so we can allocate those funds to those categories and carry money over each year in those categories.
I just bring that up because a lot of the comments I heard when we went to bond was, why don't you just save up the money?
Because it takes 100 years to do it.
That, and we're limited on what we, the amount we can save, right?
Yeah.
Can any of that amount go towards teacher salaries?
If the board chooses to budget for that, yes.
So what is the amount that we have in our rainy day fund right now, do you know?
Our overall fund balance in operations is about $20 million at the beginning of the year. So if we rolled over another 25, we would have, I'm sorry, another 5 this year, we'd have $25 million carry forward in operations.
Is that rainy day fund?
I don't like to use the word rainy day because that means it's not assigned to any particular area. Right now it's assigned to operations, so we could use it in operations.
I think, Neil, if I can, I think the concern is if we do roll that 2 million over one year and 5 million the other year, is that ongoing money type of thing? Because that's the only kind of money really we could put into salaries. If we put it into salaries and it's any kind of one-time money, then all of a sudden the next year we could well be short.
Your fund balances are considered one-time money.
Okay. But I mean, I guess the fact that we've rolled it over a couple of years in a row, does that mean there's something that has been ongoing that we haven't? Does that make sense?
We could increase salaries overall by a few $1 million and be able to roll that forward. But you also want to be careful of when we go out to bond, we need to have essentially a down payment or bank account. Kind of like when you buy a home, they want to make sure you have a certain amount of leftover funds to fund your lifestyle. So same thing applies here to our bond raters. They want to see we have sufficient funds in case we have revenue decrease to cover our obligations. Usually 3 months expenses is what the measurement they like to see.
And it sounds like a lot of money to add to teacher salary, but did it cost us $1 million for the $500 bonus? Is that how much it was? For the one-time $500 bonus? So it to increase a salary, it would take.
So
total 50,000, isn't that what you said now?
Yeah, 136 is operations for everything. It goes in our buildings. Our salaries and benefits district-wide cost us about $117 million a year.
So using 5 million, if we had left over, would not add much to individual salaries. That's what
it would be equal right around a 3% increase after steps and lanes on top of the established salary schedule.
So you mentioned that if you go to bond, they'd like you to have 3 months of money to cover. What is that figure? What would that be for 3 months operation? Is that 3 months operational?
Operational. It's probably going to be right around. Let's see here. Our budget is about 136 million for operations per year, and we got 12 months in a year. We're right about a little less than 12 million. We'll call it $10 million a month, and so we need to have $30 million in savings. We only have 20 in operation budget right now. We have about 20 in capital. We have some in debt. Our food service fund is restricted and it's a little bit higher, so we really can't count that in operations, even though it's part of child nutrition. So really, we're not quite 3 months of expenditures saved up in our operation fund. I think that's what a prior business administrator is trying to do, is add more savings to the account to get to that amount of savings.
Any other questions for Neil? All right, we're going to move on to board committee reports. Easton's not here for his student board member report, but does anyone have a committee report for us from this month?
Easton was excused. He did have a tennis match tonight, and he wanted to come at 6:30, report, but be back by 7. And I said, just go be a high school kid. So
that's good.
I did get to visit the community councils for. Is that when I do this? Yeah. North Park and the intermediate. And in there, it was interesting. We talked a lot about the the proposal for what's happening. And it just seems like the more information that people get, then the more supportive they are of everything. So I don't know, just wanted to share that the information is really good and people want to support it if they understand it.
Thank you. I also attended community council meetings for Fielding and the Bear River Middle School and Bear River High School. One thing from Bear River Middle School is the appreciation for those new online course options. the parents and teachers that were there were really excited about that. So I'm glad we're offering those things. Thank you.
Golden Spikes Community Council was delayed because Shaylin and Assistant Principal Bocut went to Brigham City Council meeting because they had students getting recognized by the mayor and the city council. And I should have brought that up earlier and had us have Shaylin tell us why they were being recognized. I don't remember. Do you know, Heidi Jo?
Sorry, what?
Why the Golden Spike students were recognized at city council?
Oh, yeah, I didn't hear that, but I'm wondering if it's similar to what's happening on the Tremont end now.
Okay.
I'll reach out and find out.
There's a really good picture, so I'll make sure I send that to someone that we could maybe post it if parents are okay with it, but.
This is, I'm not a board member, but a quick report. Mrs. Kent from Box Elder High School sent us an email or a text just tonight that said Soraya, I don't know how to pronounce that last, C-A-L-L-E-S, Callis, won the state for Poetry Out Loud and will be representing Box Elder High at the national competition. It's in Washington, D.C. So that's really a big thing. Her dad is a teacher at Weber, art at Weber. So that, I thought, we'll probably get to recognize her, but I thought it just happened tonight, so bring that up.
That's awesome. Can we add that to have her come do her poem?
That would be cool.
Poetry
Let's-
poem?
Part of recognition.
Do I do that? Yep.
Hey, I did attend one of those nights in college. It was really.
You don't.
What's her name again?
Soraya, C-A-L-L-E-S.
We'll email you. Just email Stephanie maybe.
Okay.
It's a beatnik night.
You can do it. Are there any other reports from committees? Okay, let's move on to our policy review.
I will comment quickly that this policy review is still catching up from the 2024 legislative session. So yes. So, and you can see how many, if those board members who've been on for a while, you probably remember a time when there was probably 4 or 5 on first and 4 or 5 on second, and now it's become a whole different ball of wax, to your point. To your
Yeah,
point.
Collect the data, that's right.
And how long are those meetings, and how many hours does it take?
2 hours, and there's 10 people sitting around the table, and there's probably, I don't know, we've figured there's a few $1,000s every time we sit down there, so but that's exactly what.
There's prep work that goes in before
And
each
there's
of
a ton
those
of prep
meetings.
work, exactly, yep.
I just have a comment on 2032, one of the acronyms, it's on page 3D1. Most of the time it's SDBO, meaning School District Building Official. There's one time when it's SBDO, so that needs to probably be changed. And then I have a
Did you
question.
see, sorry, Karen, where is it again?
D1, page 3 of 6 of 2032.
Just a transposition of
Yeah,
numbers?
just the acronym.
Oh, there, I can see.
So the very last sentence.
The acronym is supposed to be SDBO for School District Building Official.
Yeah.
And the very last time, it's SBDO. So they just got those second and third letter transposed.
It's in D,
And
it's in
it's
D1.
D1. Yeah,
That-
just in D1.
The last sentence of D1, yep, correct?
Right.
Right there.
And
Should be
then
SDB.
I just have a question on 3008. See if I can pull that one up. On this one, addressing concerns, it talks about the line of communication going down from addressing direct supervisor, building principal, district director, assistant superintendent, and board of education. I just want to make sure that that's the board of education as a whole. I think at any time, any person is available to talk to their elected representative. That's just their right. So isn't that just the district, the board of education as a whole, not individual board members? Is that right?
I think when it does speak of Board of Education, it is talking to the entire group.
Yeah, so people are still okay to talk.
Oh, yeah.
To the representatives. Okay.
Just a question, and maybe tell me if this isn't what I should say out loud here. But I had somebody call, and it was from Brian's district, and then I talked to them. Is that permissible if they're not in my district? Yeah. Okay.
I think
You represent the whole district once you're elected.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate you. We had a good conversation, so thank you.
All right,
With
do we have a
that, I
motion?
would have a motion to pass the policies on first reading with that one acronym change.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. The second reading.
I
Do we
make
have
a
a
motion that we pass the policies on second reading.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion
President Summers?
passes. Yes.
I would make a motion that we move item J1 to the April board meeting in consideration of time, if superintendent and assistant superintendents are okay with that.
I think that's a great idea.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. We'll discuss that in April. I don't know why we have board committee reports and board member reports. Well, let's go over that. Does anyone have a board member report? I just, yeah, let's combine them. That should just be one. Thank you. All right, our consent items.
We approve our consent items.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Suggestions for future board meetings.
So just moving J1 to April, and then the poetry, state winning poetry.
Anything else?
And I would love to have more presentations like we did tonight.
I was going to say thank you for following up on the safety presentation as requested last week. Thank you. That was, and all the others were great, so thank you.
I don't want to add like a huge burden to our administrators, but it was really great information that we got tonight.
I would ask for your consideration that the first public comment on school fees not be done in 3 weeks. I might be done, but with it's complicated and the change, I would suggest that first read goes to May, second read goes to June, so that we are in compliance with July 1, if that's okay.
Is that just in that?
It shows
on it?
first because I had originally told Marcy, let's just wait. But in the second bullet, it says first public comment on school fees. I'd like to move that to May. And then we'll be ready to go.
Okay.
All right.
You'll help remind Marcy?
I'll let her know. I just wanted to make
We'll
sure the
talk
board
about
was
it
okay
in
with that.
Board agenda review. Thank you.
Okay. All right, upcoming events. We have our spring regional meeting tomorrow night at Maddox at 6 o'clock. And the graduations, I think we're all lined up for those. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I don't have a question on graduation, but is it Professional Development Day Friday?
Yes.
Is it at Bear River or Box Elder?
No, because that one was November 1st this year. We were kind of thinking we might be doing some things with the bond, so we moved it to November instead of March. And then because of the reduction in days, principals needed that professional development day to actually be served August 14th. So most staff will not actually be working March 14th. They traded it for the August 14th day.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for asking about that.
But if you need
If
something,
you see the parking lot's empty, it's not because they don't care. It's because they are already working so many hours.
but if you need something to do, there's a play that night.
That's right. All right, the board handbook, we don't have anything from that tonight.
No.
Okay. All right, we need a motion to move into, actually, do I close this session? Okay. We need a motion to move into closed session, please.
I move we move into closed session for sale or lease of real property.
I second.
All right, and we'll take a roll call vote. So did we get those names for, so Brian Smith had the motion and Danielle seconded? All right, roll call vote, please.
Julie Taylor, yes.
Brian Smith, yes?
Tiffany Summers, yes.
Danielle Wright, yes.
Stephanie D. Phillips, yes.
Wade Hyde, yes.
Karen Cronin, yes.
All right.
Okay, we'll go in
Are we
that other room
doing-
right there and,
Personnel first, so Karina can go home.
yeah.